I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thanks. It's 6:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, there were 8 NBA games Sunday, all with poignant tributes to Kobe Bryant, who about midway through his Lakers career switched from number 8 to number 24. So before every game last night, the moment of silence lasted 24 seconds. Each team purposely took a 24-second violation. It happened at the Garden. Knicks-Nets game did not have the usual feel of an NBA contest. Kyrie Irving got the news when he arrived, told the Nets he was so distraught he was in no condition to play, and Irving went home. The Knicks won the game 110-97. Their coach is Mike Miller.
It didn't really look at it as a challenge. We just, as we go through this, real life things are going on, and our locker room had some heavy hearts in there, and they went out and played, and I would say that it was a tribute to Kobe to go out and play the game as he would play the game.
The Lakers got the tragic news while flying home, ironically, from Bryant's native Philadelphia, where Saturday LeBron James actually passed Kobe, moved into third on the NBA's all-time scoring list. The Lakers will play the Clippers at the Staples Center tomorrow night. Golf in San Diego, the Aussie Mark Leishman held on, one by one shot over Jon Rahm. Tiger Woods, who's a lifelong Laker fan, did not know the news about Kobe. His caddy did not tell him, although in the gallery they were saying do it for Mamba, and Tiger didn't know what they were referring to. Australian Open, good match going on right now between the top seed Rafael Nadal and the Aussie Nick Kyrgios, tied 1-set-all and now 6-6 in a third-set tiebreaker. For the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
And John, tributes to Kobe Bryant continued in Miami ahead of the Super Bowl. Both Kansas City and San Francisco are paying tribute on social media. The 49ers wrote, "A legend gone too soon." Kansas City Chiefs defensive end Frank Clark had this to say on Twitter: "I'm devastated. R.I.P. to my idol." Chiefs cornerback Bashad Breeland called it a sad day in America. S&P futures are lower by almost 55 points now. Dow futures down 473. NASDAQ futures down 190 points. This is Bloomberg.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Business is constant.
Take the helm and ignite your spirit of adventure with a Sunsail holiday. Relax on a skippered yacht from sunny St. Lucia to the nutmeg-scented shores of Grenada. Or take charge with a bareboat charter along Dubrovnik's glittering coastline. Up to 20% off selected destinations. Now is the time to book your Sunsail adventure. Sunsail. See the world differently.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it, add a boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Dad, I'm doing the mashed potatoes too.
Do the Albert Bartlett potato mash.
Do the twist.
Do the patatas bravas with a British twist.
Yeah. Do the brown sauce, balsamic and chutney.
Oh, do the melting potato slices.
Do the dishes.
Grab a brand new recyclable bag today and do the Albert Bartlett.
He's got a brand new bag.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Here's Manus Craney.
To the central bank conversation, it is Fed week. And no change is expected from Jay Powell and the FOMC, but former policymakers and veteran Fed watchers are increasingly preoccupied with what the central bank will be able to do and the tools that it will need for the next downturn. Hugh Gimber is from JP Morgan Asset Management. This is the debate. It's from Dartmouth College, Andrew Levin. At this point, the Fed is practically out of ammunition to fight the next recession. I've heard this countless times. They're at 1.5 to 1.75%. Typically in a downturn, you need 5 rate cuts or thereabouts if history is anything to go by. Do you agree that the Fed is practically out of ammunition to fight the next recession?
I wouldn't go as far as that personally, because I think what we've seen from the Fed and other central banks across the globe is that their ability to experiment and find new ways of stimulating their economy remains very much intact. And so, yes, you look at where Fed funds lie today, and I agree with you that perhaps only using interest rates is not going to be enough for the Fed when the next downturn comes, but I'm sure that they'll be looking at asset purchases and other forms of policy to try and get their economy going again. So clearly, the outlook for them is more challenged than relative to previous recessions.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. S&P futures dropping down 55 points this morning. Dow futures down 473. NASDAQ futures down 187. The DAX in Germany's down 2.25%. 10-year Treasury up 23 seconds. Yield 1.60%. And the yield on the 2-year 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil's down 3.6% or $1.97 at $52.22 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up about 0.8% or $11.60 at $15.89.80 an ounce. Euro 1.1023 against the dollar, the yen 108.85, and shares of Boeing falling after reports that one of its planes crashed in Afghanistan. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, President Trump's defense team continues its case today in the impeachment trial, according to a New York Times report citing ex-National Security Advisor John Bolton's unpublished manuscript. In August, the president wanted to continue freezing aid to Ukraine until the government there investigated political rival Joe Biden. NBA fans remain shocked after the helicopter crash that killed Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, and 7 others. NTSB investigators are at the scene trying to figure out why the chopper crashed in Calabasas, California. In the NBA, tributes were paid to Bryant during the games. The Knicks beat the Nets 110-97. The Celtics and Wizards lost. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thank you, Michael. 6:19 on Wall Street is the time now. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak. Let's get set up for the trading day and week ahead. Joining us in New York, Joe Weisenthal, head of the Americas News Desk for Bloomberg News. In London, News Director David Merritt is with us. And in Hong Kong, we're pleased to be joined by Senior Executive Editor Madeline Lim. And we'll start with you, Madeline, because certainly markets sentiment seems to be dominated by the spreading coronavirus in China. We are seeing a major risk-off mood this morning, and it's likely to dominate the week.
Yes, it is indeed, Colin. It's not a good start to the year of the rat, you could say, with deaths now around at least 80 and over 2,800 people, confirmed cases around the world of this new virus. I think the thing that people are watching for here is what is the government going to do around. They've already extended the New Year holiday to next Monday. It was China was supposed to come back to work on Friday. The schools have been closed for longer. The municipal government of Shanghai has asked companies not to get people to come back to work until the 9th of February. So there's a lot of uncertainty around, will the markets open in China on Monday? What's going to happen? We haven't really heard anything. And also, of course, what's going to happen with foreign nationals? The US, Japan, the UK now have kind of said we're bringing people back home from Wuhan and other places who want to come home. And there's all these questions. Credit Suisse, for example, has just told staff to work from home, anybody who's visited China. So there's a lot of uncertainty around how this will all play out. And I think that's keeping people and markets on edge.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing that uncertainty play out in U.S. markets, Joe Weisenthal. Steep slides to U.S. futures, and treasuries are rising, and bets are ramping up that we could see a Fed rate cut sooner than expected.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously looking like today is going to be a very strong risk-off move in the markets. Dow futures pointing to around 500 point decline. S&P futures down over 1.5%. Not surprisingly, you would see this pickup in bets that the Fed could cut because, look, obviously on this sort of flight to safety, you see yields move lower and expectations of a slowing economy. If trade slows, if CEO nervousness picks up, very plausible. People just don't know. I mean, I think the overriding thing here is extreme levels of uncertainty, and in that environment, you would expect maybe the Fed to be, back on guard, so to speak, for the need to cut.
Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting to see that Fed decision on Wednesday. And, of course, a day later, David Merritt, we get a rate decision from the Bank of England. And there's a little bit more uncertainty there as well, but not just because of health concerns.
Yeah, that's right. We don't often get cliffhanger Bank of England decisions, but this is the final decision by Mark Carney before he hands over the reins next month. And the market's really split. What's he going to do? Up till last week, everyone thought there was going to be a rate cut, but lots of bad economic data out of the UK up towards the end of last year. Then last week, we had some very positive PMI data, really beating expectations. That's really baking in this surge in optimism after the big Johnson win and the big majority government he got. So which way they're going to go? Economists are saying that he's going to keep it on hold. The traders are saying, the market's saying actually about 60% as of this morning, there's going to be a rate cut. So we will find out noon on Thursday in London.
Yeah, I wonder how long markets are going to stay on hold, particularly in China, Madeline, with the Lunar New Year being extended now.
Right, exactly. We have not heard any official announcement from the China securities regulator or the Shanghai or Shenzhen stock exchanges so far on when they will reopen. You could assume that if the holiday has been extended and people are asked not to come back to work, that at least until next Monday there will be no trading, but possibly even later. However, you can see that people are already trading the outcome of the impact of this epidemic or this virus outbreak. The offshore yuan has weakened the most since mid-December, and China, the MSCI China ETF has fallen almost more than 6%.
Let's go back to you, Joe Weisenthal. This was already going to be an interesting week for earnings, particularly in the tech sector.
Yeah, obviously what we've seen up until recently with this extraordinary market rally has been a heavy concentration back in those big cap tech names that have just been dominating for years. So high stakes for the big tech companies. But I think it'll be interesting, regardless of what they do and whether they can live up to expectations. For now, I feel like whether it's earnings or whether it's economic data, it's all going to feel like a little bit old news until investors feel like they have some sort of handle on the scope of the risks emanating from this virus.
Yeah, certainly. Finally, over to you, David Merritt. On Friday, Brexit gets done.
Well, the first bit's done at least. This big historical moment. Britain will leave the EU, 11 p.m. London time, Friday night. Cause for celebrations for many and, mourning for others because the country remains heavily divided. Thoughts will then turn to the future relationship. Trade talks then will really kick off, not only, of course, between the EU and Britain, but with the United States and all the other countries around the world.
Bloomberg News Director David Merritt with us in London. Also thanks this morning to Senior Executive Editor Madeline Lim in Hong Kong and Joe Weisenthal, head of the Americas News Desk for Bloomberg News. S&P futures right now down 1.5%, a drop of 49 points. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street is headed for an ugly open with Dow futures down almost 500 points amid deepening worries about the economic and human impact of the deadly new coronavirus in China. We're seeing this impacting oil as well, down almost 3.5% at $52.34 a barrel. Stocks also slid last Friday with the broader equity market in the U.S. down about 1%. This week, investors also look ahead to some earnings from big tech companies. We hear from Apple, Facebook, and Samsung. And we'll also watch today for the December report on new home sales. Royal Bank of Scotland is planning to eliminate thousands of jobs at its NatWest unit. The Sunday Times says the reductions are part of cost-cutting measures overseen by the newly appointed CEO. The report says one idea being discussed could see 3,700 retail banking jobs cut from the total staff of around 60,000. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
What?
Take the helm and ignite your spirit of adventure with a Sunsail holiday. Relax on a skippered yacht from sunny St. Lucia to the nutmeg-scented shores of Grenada. Or take charge with a bareboat charter along Dubrovnik's glittering coastline. With up to 20% off selected destinations, now is the time to book your Sunsail adventure. Sunsail. See the world differently.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sail.
That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It is 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures and European stocks are tumbling as fear over the coronavirus hits markets. Reports show the infection spreading around the globe, while the cases in China continue to grow. We get the very latest from Bloomberg's Brian Fowler in Tokyo.
We've got close to 3,000 confirmed cases of people who are sick with the virus and many more who are still under observation. Beijing came out and decided this morning to extend the Lunar New Year holidays by another 3 days to February 2nd to try to clamp down on the spread of the virus. We don't know yet if markets will also stay closed that long.
Well, right now, S&P futures are lower by 1.4%. The stock 600 in Europe is down 1.8%, and Treasury yields are falling on haven demand. Richard Jones is an FX and rates strategist for Bloomberg.
This has been a move that has been gaining momentum over the past week as the coronavirus story has deepened and we've learned more about it. The yields on the U.S. short end are coming off quite sharply. I think that Treasuries will probably still remain the most sought-after haven.
And that flight to safety now has yields on 10-year Treasuries at 1.61%.
Oil moving sharply lower on fears the virus will dent demand. Saudi Arabia says it's closely monitoring the situation. Checking prices now, West Texas Intermediate is down 3% at $52.56 a barrel. Brent is down 2.9% at $58.93.
Fear about the virus is also growing as evidence points to a 2-week incubation period before patients show symptoms. That raises the possibility of people carrying it without knowing it.
The death toll from the outbreak has now climbed to at least 80. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live now with the very latest. Good morning, John.
And Karen, so far mainland China accounts for 98% of confirmed infections. More than a dozen countries and territories report the illness within their borders. The U.S. has 5 cases, 2 in Southern California, 1 each in Arizona, Washington State, and Chicago. Symptoms of the virus include fever, cough, or chest tightness, and difficulty breathing. And the medical journal Lancet says a clinical trial is underway using anti-HIV drugs to treat cases of the virus. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak. Nathan.
All right, John, thank you. Shifting gears to another developing story. Shares of Boeing are falling after reports one of its planes crashed in Afghanistan. A 737-400 passenger plane reportedly crashed while carrying around 83 people. Right now, Boeing shares are down more than 2% in early trading.
And futures are falling with S&P futures down 45 points, Dow futures down 397, and NASDAQ futures down 160. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It's 6:33 on Wall Street, and this news update is brought to you by Land Rover. Life's an adventure. Experience it in the new Land Rover Discovery Sport. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for details on the new Discovery Sport. Land Rover, above and beyond. Now here's Michael Varr.
Nathan, thank you very much. Authorities are trying to find the cause of yesterday's helicopter crash that carried Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, and 7 other people. Authorities say conditions were extremely foggy when the NBA legend's helicopter went down northwest of Los Angeles on a hillside in Calabasas, killing everyone aboard. Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva says that debris is scattered over an area the size of a football field.
It's a logistical nightmare in a sense because the crash site itself is not easily accessible. However, we're now faced with well-wishers and people mourning.
L.A. County Medical Examiner Dr. Jonathan Lucas.
Given the terrain and the condition of the site,
We expect that this will probably take at least a couple, if not a few days, to complete the recovery.
Bryant was 41. Senate Republicans are facing new pressure to call witnesses in Donald Trump's impeachment trial after a new report that the president told his then National Security Advisor John Bolton in August he wanted to continue freezing aid to Ukraine until the government there investigated the Bidens. Meanwhile, President Trump says that Democratic Congressman and impeachment manager Adam Schiff has not paid the price yet for what he has done to our country. On NBC's Meet the Press, Schiff was asked if he took the Twitter comment as a threat.
I think it's intended to be. But look, it is going to be very difficult for some of these senators to stand up to this president. It really is. There's just no question about it.
Meet the Press can be heard Sundays on Bloomberg Radio. During the trial, Schiff cited a report that said Republicans were told, your head will be on a pike if you vote against President Trump. The comment sparked an audible reaction from Republican senators, including James Langford, who spoke on CNN's State of the Union.
I'm offended only because Adam Schiff believes that the only reason that we act the way that we do is because the president's going to put our head on a pike. He's invalidating all of our motives. He's saying you're going to ignore all the facts, and you're only doing this because you're afraid of the president, rather than we'll actually be fair in the process and actually look at the facts.
3 rockets reportedly struck the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad, leaving 1 person injured. However, the injuries were minor. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. 6:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, it will be very emotional tomorrow night when the Lakers play the Clippers in L.A. Magic Johnson yesterday called Kobe Bryant the greatest Laker of all. He became a Laker as a result of one of the great trades in NBA history, and the guy who made that trade, Jerry West.
He's bigger than life, and Kobe's legacy, that it will remain forever. His impact will remain forever.
On hearing the news yesterday, West said he felt like he had lost a son. Here's Clippers coach Doc Rivers.
The news is just devastating for Vanessa and his family, and there's just so many people he touched. And, you know, it's looking at my young players and seeing how emotional they are. They didn't even know him, you know, and it just tells you how far his reach was. So, I mean, this is just shocking news for all of us.
The games went on Sunday. The moments of silence lasted 24 seconds to honor Kobe's number 24. In fact, both teams purposely took a 24-second violation before starting to play at the Garden. Knicks beat the Nets 110-97. Kyrie Irving was so distraught he went home. He didn't play. Nick Kyrgios is the talented but emotional Australian whose emotions always seem to hinder his ability to win big matches. Playing a big one right now at the Australian Open. They went to a third-set tiebreaker after splitting the first 2. Rafael Nadal pulled out the tiebreaker 8-6, and now he's leading 2-1. Another Aussie, Mark Leishman, shot 65-31 on the front 9. He won the Farmers Insurance at Torrey Pines by 1 shot. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
And John, as the sports world remembers and mourns Kobe Bryant, Bloomberg Radio spoke with the NBA legend just 5 months ago. He sat down with Bloomberg Business Week hosts Carol Masser and Jason Kelly to discuss life after basketball. It now seems like an appropriate time to listen back to that conversation. So here are Carol and Jason speaking with Kobe Bryant in August.
You have gone through a transition, obviously.
Yeah.
I love that you're an author. I was reading somewhere that you kind of knew it was time to go, that you were thinking a lot about storytelling.
Yeah.
Have you always been a writer?
I have. I've been practicing writing. I started writing my junior year in high school. And when I got to the NBA, you know, there's a lot of downtime in travel and hotels and things of that sort. So I would just write. And a lot of the things that I used to write were just ads. I would write advertisements. I had an ad agency that I founded, and we did a lot of work, won some awards for being a small agency. And then when I retired, it was like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Well, I don't know. I enjoy writing, and I'll write a film. So I wrote Dear Basketball, and was very fortunate for that to be successful, and then just continued on.
And how is it different from what, you know, how many years you played in the NBA? I mean, what are you learning kind of about yourself in doing this?
Well, how much I enjoy teaching and like passing on information to the next generation. It feels much, much better than any championship that can be won, because it's more lasting. right? If I can do something that inspires a kid in some way, or gets the kid to view something differently in some way, and then he goes through his life, she goes through her life, and then in turn they inspire someone else, you create this domino effect that is far greater than any championship that can be won. And
Huge
that's
impact,
fun.
right?
Huge.
You know, one thing I want to ask you about, and I guess it's kind of near and dear to both of us, but we think about equality in sports, and we've been talking about how tennis seems to have figured it out, but a lot of other sports haven't. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And that's probably I won't say probably, it is our mission to do something about that. I mean, I have 4 girls. And the first 2 are definitely athletes. The third one and the fourth one, we'll see, is still too young. But if I had to bet, I'd say they'd be athletes as well.
Right.
So it's important to fight for that and make sure that when they come of age, that they are ready to get equal pay, right? And fight for what it is that they deserve.
Why has it been such a struggle, do you think?
That's a great question. I do not know. Yeah. It's like there's a lack of investment. I tell you, like in basketball, for example, the WNBA. I said, okay, well, the WNBA is not as popular as the NBA. Okay, well, I can remember the NBA when it first started. And I remember some companies putting a lot of money behind marketing players.
Yeah.
And through marketing those players, the popularity of the game picked up. You guys are sitting here and saying, okay, you're waiting for the WNBA to become popular. Well, we're waiting on the investment from corporations to start telling the stories of some of these young women that have unbelievable stories, unbelievable inspirational stories to tell, and they're not being told. Why? Right? And so we're going to get there.
That was Kobe Bryant speaking with Bloomberg Businessweek hosts Carol Massar and Jason Kelly. Bryant was killed in a helicopter crash in Southern California yesterday at the age of 41. There were 9 people among the dead, including Bryant's 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. S&P futures are lower by 47 points now. Dow futures down 416. NASDAQ futures down almost 169 points. This is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at...
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Boredom. Fitness enemy #1. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
A network of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
There is mourning all over the world for NBA legend Kobe Bryant, killed in that helicopter crash yesterday. In Italy, where Bryant grew up, the Italian Basketball Federation says it has ordered a minute's silence to be observed for all games in every category for the entire week. Now, the investigation into the crash that killed Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, and 7 others. Omar Jimenez is at the crash site near Los Angeles.
The FAA and NTSB are still investigating the cause of the crash, but the Los Angeles Police Department did say the weather conditions didn't meet their standards for flying.
L.A. County Sheriff Alex Villanueva on their choppers.
We had none operating in the area at the time because of the weather.
China expanding efforts to contain that viral disease, postponing the end of this week's Lunar New Year holiday to keep people at home as the death toll hits 81. The lockdown now in 17 cities with more than 50 million people affected. On Wall Street, stock futures are plunging from overnight. I'm Michael Toscano.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 6:47 on Wall Street, and futures are falling. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. That's right. U.S. futures are plunging today amid the increasing concerns of the coronavirus. Dow futures currently down 425 points. S&P dropped 48. NASDAQ futures decline by 174. The U.S. 10-year yield falls to 1.61%. Gold is higher by 13. And Shanghai remained closed overnight for the Lunar New Year, while European markets are also under pressure, led by 2% losses in the UK, France, and Germany. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 10 o'clock, new home sales, and at 10:30, the Dallas Fed. Regarding earnings this morning, G.R. Horton reported EPS of $1.16. In other news, Google's price target raised to $16.50 at Mizuho, and Amazon's price target raised to $2,300 over at Benchmark. Wrapping things up, Lazard was raised to outperform at KBW, Estee Lauder cut to market perform at Oppenheimer, and Chipotle raised to neutral at UBS with a price target of $900. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, the draft of John Bolton's new book has given Democrats new ammunition in their battle to admit new witnesses and documents into the impeachment trial. An excerpt from the ex-National Security Advisor directly contradicts some of the arguments made by President Trump's defense team. The New York Times says Bolton detailed an August conversation with Trump, claiming the president told him personally that he wanted to continue withholding military aid to Ukraine until officials there launched investigations into the Bidens. The coronavirus continues to spread. Bloomberg's John Tucker has more in this live report.
And Michael, at least 80 deaths are reported with over 2,700 cases in China. There's evidence the disease has an incubation period of as long as 2 weeks, which means patients may be spreading the virus before any symptoms even appear. A clinical trial is underway using anti-HIV drugs to treat cases of the new coronavirus. The U.S. has 5 cases, 2 in Southern California, 1 in Arizona. Washington State and Chicago earlier had confirmed infections. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak. Michael.
Thank you, sir. NTSB investigators are trying to figure out why a helicopter crashed that killed NBA legend Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, and 7 others in Calabasas, California. In the NBA, tributes were paid to Bryant during the games. The Knicks beat the Nets 110-97. The Celtics and Wizards lost. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Thank you, Michael. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, where it's coming up to 6:50 on Wall Street. Time now to check what's going on in D.C., where President Trump's legal team will resume its case against removing their client from office through impeachment this afternoon, and House Democrats will continue to press for more witnesses in the Senate trial. Lead House Manager Adam Schiff tells NBC's Meet the Press President Trump does have a right to call his own witnesses, just not irrelevant ones.
Should the trial be used as a vehicle to smear his opponent? Is that the purpose of a Senate trial, or is it to get to the truth? Because if it's to get to the truth, Hunter Biden can't tell us anything about the withholding of the military funding. Hunter Biden can't tell us why the president wouldn't let the president of Ukraine into the Oval Office.
Fellow manager Val Demings put it this way on ABC's This Week.
I think if you're innocent and you have witnesses that can support your innocence or documentation, you would freely be willing to hand that over.
Senate Republican James Lankford was on the same program.
They want to move as fast as possible, and now they want to slow down the trial as much as possible in the Senate. That's just a very odd political strategy for them, more than a fact-finding strategy. And quite frankly, it looks like they're asking the Senate to go be special counsel, go search, go seek out. That's not really the task of the Senate.
Trump team lawyer Alan Dershowitz previewed the argument he'll make today on Fox News Sunday.
Even if the factual allegations are true, which are highly disputed, in which the defense team will show contrary evidence, but even if true, they did not allege impeachable offenses, so there can't be a constitutionally authorized impeachment. That's the legal constitutional argument.
But more evidence continues to emerge, including a video, apparently of President Trump telling aides to, quote, take out then U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Marie Yovanovitch. Republican Senator Tom Cotton tells CBS's Face the Nation it probably won't change many minds.
That video was more than a year before he asked Maria Yovanovitch to be removed. And he was told in that video, we just heard, that she's running around Kiev, bad-mouthing you and saying that you're going to be impeached. The president has the right to remove any ambassador for any reason or no reason whatsoever.
And even if, as expected, the Senate trial ends in acquittal, Republican Senator Mike Braun tells Meet the Press the process could change the president's behavior.
This ought to be instructive to anyone here that if you're pushing the envelope or doing things that may not feel right, let alone be right, you better be careful.
And that is some of the conversation from the political shows you hear every Sunday on Bloomberg Radio. NBC's Meet the Press at 11 a.m. Wall Street time, Fox News Sunday at noon, ABC's This Week at 1 p.m., and Face the Nation from CBS at 2 o'clock Sundays. For more, we're joined on this Monday morning by Bloomberg U.S. politics editor Kathleen Hunter. Of course, as we've been reporting since those shows aired, Kate, last night we got this bombshell report from the New York Times on a manuscript from former White House National Security Advisor John Bolton that appears to even further solidify the link between the delayed aid to Ukraine and this push for Ukraine's president to launch political investigations. What more do we know about this?
Well, I think in particular, Nathan, the timing is very, very interesting because this revelation comes at kind of the height of Trump's attorneys presenting his defense to the Senate. And so I think one of the big arguments has been about whether or not to call witnesses. And I think that this will certainly put pressure on Republicans, increased pressure on Republicans to potentially do that. And so it'll be interesting to see whether any of the more moderate Republicans that have been a little bit on the fence about potentially being open to backing Democrats or siding with Democrats and backing that effort whether this moves them any further in that direction or not.
How will you be watching that pressure to play out as the White House counsel continues its arguments this week?
Well, I think, if I was, I think a lot of reporters up on Capitol Hill are going to be trying to talk to folks like Mitt Romney, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins, who have indicated in the past that there's a possibility they could be open to hearing, to backing Democrats' efforts to call witnesses. So I think people are going to be trying very hard to get to those folks and, take their temperature at this point to see if the Bolton revelations really move them significantly in one direction or another.
What's the political risk if witnesses are called in this trial? It's lengthened even further, and there's the possibility that Republicans want to try to call some of their own witnesses, including, as they've hinted rather loudly over the last few weeks, Hunter Biden.
Absolutely. And I think, though, for Democrats, I think the possibility of having John Bolton, someone with direct knowledge of the president's actions, testify could really be a setback for Republicans and for the Trump administration, because Trump's lawyers have really tried to argue exactly that Democrats haven't made their case, in part because they haven't presented anyone with direct knowledge who can speak directly to a firsthand account of what Trump did or didn't say. Bolton is someone who's in the position to do that. And it sounds like we now know more about what he might say if he is called, and it wouldn't be necessarily positive for Trump.
And as we head into this next week of arguments, we have new polls out this morning with implications for the 2020 election, including how President Trump is positioned for his bid for re-election.
Yeah, there's a new Washington Post ABC News poll that's out this morning that indicates that Trump is actually in better shape than he was early or late last year. And so obviously that's, good news for the president, potentially bad news for Democrats. And coming right before the Iowa caucuses, people are going to start voting soon. So we could get some clarity in the next couple weeks about who the Democratic nominee is. That's not a guarantee. That race is still very fluid. But certainly it looks like Trump's position has improved potentially, or at least stayed the same, and isn't that he's not in any worse a position than he was, several months back.
What does this poll say about the energy levels on both sides, whether the base is going to be motivated to come out in November?
Well, I think there's been a sense all along that this could be a base election, in the sense that, Trump is someone who has a very loyal base, and the Democrats on their side, I think, are sensitive to the idea that they would want to get a nominee at the top of the ticket that could similarly energize the Democratic base to come to the polls. And so I think that, certainly that's harder to do for Democrats until they pick a nominee. It's harder to rally someone it's harder to rally voters around an undefined nominee. And so certainly I think for now, this is good news for Trump in the polls, indicating, there's some indication in some of the recent polls, not just this one, that Trump's base is particularly energized, particularly around impeachment. And so certainly that would be good news for the White House.
Bloomberg U.S. Politics Editor Kathleen Hunter, thank you as always. You can read more on Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg terminal when it comes to what's happening in Washington, and listen on Bloomberg Radio in the nation's capital at Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. Karen.
Are falling this morning, with S&P futures down about 50 points. Dow futures down 441. That's down about 1.5%. While NASDAQ futures are down 175 points, down about 1.9%. 10-year Treasury up 20-30 seconds, yield 1.61%. The yield on the 2-year 1.43%. And NYMEX crude oil down 3% on $1.65 at $52.54 a barrel. COMEX gold is up about 0.75% this morning. Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influential conversation.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up, lift. Mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it Run.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
I've got my own place now, Money. My parents put up the 10% security. And when I keep up my repayments, they get it back with interest in 5 years from Barclays. And now we can do whatever we want. Right, Dave? We don't have to tiptoe up the stairs. I can paint the living room purple. Don't look at me like that, Money. It's my house. Barclays Family Springboard Mortgage. Make money work for you.
Your home may be repossessed if mortgage payments are missed. Deposit returned with interest after 5 years if no repayments missed. Subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply.
Given the data.
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
American economic power and future depends on trade deals.
In many of these countries, we're still seeing people struggling.
Finance.
We're in this vortex of uncertainty. These big companies, they just sometimes lack focus.
Investment.
The markets have become a little bit too addicted to the Fed.
Timing the market is just so difficult.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City for our audience worldwide. Good morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, coronavirus spreading, China struggling to contain it, fueling a growth scare, sending treasuries higher, equities lower, ahead of a big week for earnings and the Fed's first rate decision of 2020. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, hello Monday. Here is your Monday morning price action. Equity futures down 1.41%, down 47 points on the S&P 500. The risk aversion captured in the FX market. Stronger yen, stronger Swissy, and in the bond market, 10-year treasuries advanced for 5 straight days. Yields lower by 6 basis points to 162, and we have the flattest yield curve of the year so far. The distance between 2s and 10s, just 18 basis points. Tom Keene and myself are back in New York City. Flew separately out of Zurich into
you have to
New
do
York.
that. Francine flew separately.
Management insists. It's great to see you.
Francine and I tried to go together through London. They said,
Did you
no,
really?
No, you can't do that.
Well, it's good to see you.
Too much risk. Good to see you as well. We can talk about Davos here going forward. I like what you did on bonds there, John. The linkage here, the lock-in, it was worse an hour ago, negative 55, futures now negative 46. But the bond markets, Georgia, for the gloom crew, John, they got to where they thought they'd go, maybe not for the same reason they thought, but they're there. SocGen, BNP, and the others, they're the PIMCO.
We got there really quick as well. You look at the breakdown in the equity market in Europe on the Stock 600, every single sector trading lower today. Basic resources down 3.75%. Lisa Abramowitz, we have a growth scare on our hands gripping this market.
And here's my fundamental question. Does the coronavirus actually threaten global growth that much, or is this an excuse for people to sort of bring out the bears and say, look, we've been wanting to do this anyway, and we see a lot of weakness, and this is a fantastic excuse to cash in? I mean, to me, that's a fundamental question. How much does this virus and the spread of it decrease economic growth to a tipping point? And that's what's getting pricey.
Well, I think when markets are priced where they were going into this particular scare, you're vulnerable, of course you are. But when you see cities this big shutting down and the government essentially saying that the holiday is going to last a whole lot longer than we thought it was, when you start to think about the disruption to supply chains, when you start to think about how vulnerable the recovery was in the global economy already, we see that in the German IFO a little bit earlier this morning, disappointing once again. It was a fragile recovery. We saw that in the data over the last several months, and anything that would knock that off course, I think, is a real risk.
It is a real risk, but I guess when I talk to economists, it's unclear the degree to which this potentially could puncture growth in China. And frankly, markets haven't responded this significantly to, say, a natural catastrophe. I'm just saying it's sort of unclear the actual connection to the economic fall through and the response in markets right now.
There's little moments in Davos, and one of them was with Angel Guerra of the OECD, who made very clear to us that there was a differential between IMF outlook and a more cautious OECD outlook. Carl Weinberg joins us now to reframe the growth debate this morning. Carl, do you take the entire high-frequency economics view and ratchet it down? Where are you now for global growth and U.S. growth?
Well, U.S. growth, we think the U.S. economy is doing well enough in domestic demand to outweigh the slowdown in world trade, the contraction of world trade that we're actually seeing.
Give me some numbers.
Well, we're talking about world trade being down about 0.5% year over year, world global exports, and that's only happened 5 times before in the last 50 years, so it's a notable event. U.S. GDP growth around 2.2, 2.3%, largely driven by domestic demand, with exports being weak. Europe, dead flat right now, but on a decelerating trend.
What's your global number? I was stunned in Davos how some of them are framing under 3% global real economic growth. Folks, that is unusual to say the least.
Yeah, the IMF has, I think, 2.9, and that's a big markdown, but they have it, boom, going right back up in the next forecast period in 2021, right back up to 3.3, 3.4%, which is still a low number, but not as terrifying as 2.9. And of course, what I say is every time I read an IMF forecast for an economic recovery, I say to myself, on a basis of what? What's going to drive the world economy back? And it's not going to be monetary policy, it's not going to be fiscal policy, so I guess it's just going to be animal spirits. And of course, missing from Davos was any explanation at all for the decline in world trade. None. So if you can't tell me why it's happening, and I can't tell you why it's happening, how can you tell me that it's over? So I'm on the gloomy side, Tom, for the world
Well, let's
economy.
talk about how fragile the recovery actually is then, Carl, and whether something like what we see at the moment playing out in China can really knock us off course.
Well, if it turns into a big thing, it could knock us off course. But when I listen to Lisa run down her argument, I have to say to her, I don't know. I don't know anything about this disease. Nobody does. Nobody knows the extent to it. Nobody knows how far it's going to go. So we can't go that. But if it got to be really serious, all right, or let's look at the changes that the government has introduced. Okay, so they've extended the holiday period now to February 2nd. So they've shut down the Friday after a 10-day holiday break, where very few people were going to come back to work anyhow, and where a lot of firms weren't going to reopen anyhow, and then a weekend. So we really don't have a big dent to production. And of course, what we've learned in the past is when we have disasters and things like this, not only does the economy snap back quickly in the subsequent quarters, but the loss of output is less than you expect, because a lot of the economy continues to be active, even though people aren't at work. We make utilities, we buy food, the trains still run and so forth. In this case, the trains may not run, but the point being that the hit may be smaller than the market is currently pricing in. I say maybe because maybe tomorrow we'll have some serious medicine that says this is the scariest thing since, what were you talking about before, Tom, the 1918 flu epidemic? Maybe we'll get some
I'm the only one in the room who was around for it.
Black plague.
But for the moment, we just don't know the extent of it. So I like Lisa's hypothesis that says that people were ready to take profits anyhow. This catalyzes it, but I can't make myself jump into the camp that says this is the end of world trade. Now, if China gets locked down for a month, that's a different story. That's a big hit to the world
Carl,
economy.
I don't think anyone's sitting around this table saying this is the end of world trade. I think you're focusing on the right thing. No one around this table is going to pretend to be a doctor over the next several months or for however long this plays out. What you focus on is the potential disruption to cities and the measures that the Chinese will take to stop this epidemic from spreading. And what we see so far are major cities effectively shutting down, banning travel. We see holidays being extended. And as you point out quite rightly, it's the traditional time of the year where that happens anyway. It might just go on for a little bit longer. Walk us through, our audience, what they should be focused on in the coming weeks. Not pretending to be a doctor, but looking at the economics of all of this.
So let's be an economist. So Wuhan is a city of 11 million people. It's bigger than New York. It's bigger than London. It's bigger than Paris. It's bigger than pretty much any other city except for others in China. But in a country of 1.4 billion people, all right, it is a piece of a much larger puzzle. Right. Shanghai is a bigger deal, but they're not shutting down, although there are sporadic reports of some companies not coming back to work. So with Wuhan by itself and Hubei, which is 60 million people, roughly the population of France, still within a 1.4 billion person economy, it will make a dent, but will it derail the economy and throw it into a recession? I don't think so.
In 2003, the SARS outbreak caused the estimated decline in the GDP of China of about 1%.
In one quarter.
In 1 quarter,
right.
A 1% decline in GDP.
And then it got back the next quarter. If you look at the 4 quarters from the fourth quarter of 2002 to the third quarter of 2003, there's no discernible deviation of the pattern of GDP from what the seasonal suggests.
To be clear, 800 people died, more than that. It was much more virulent than what we are currently experiencing. Of course, we don't know how this is going to evolve. If it transpires in the same way, do you think that it could materially throw the global economic recovery off course?
I'll just be, very crass about it. 800 deaths, all right, is not going to throw the world economy off course. All right, it's a tragedy for the people involved, but at the end of the day, and I'm not a doctor, I don't play one on TV.
But Carl, we should emphasize,
but you look like one.
Carl, it's not about how many people die, it's the measures the Chinese take to stop people from dying.
And shutting down Wuhan is an exceptional, unprecedented measure. And it sounds brutal, and it is
From the
brutal.
economist perspective, that's where the focus is.
Right, and my focus is that Wuhan is a big city, but in the scope of all of China and all of the world, okay, I don't think it's enough to throw the train off the track.
Carl Weinberg, thank you so much with High Frequency Economics. And, Drew Armstrong was just brilliant this morning with Max Neeson as well.
He's coming up a little bit later on this program.
I did not know that. Thank you. The team, folks, is working real time here on putting together these disparate ideas. What you need to know, folks, before we go to the news, is futures negative 50, 55 earlier. We finally got a little bid to the market, negative 45 SPX futures, Dow futures at negative 390. With the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
John, Lisa, thank you very much. The New York Times reports that former National Security Advisor John Bolton's forthcoming book alleges that President Trump tied Ukraine aid probing Joe Biden and his son. The revelations are reigniting calls for witnesses in the Senate impeachment trial of the president. Former Vice President Joe Biden was asked about the book.
I've not seen the manuscript. I don't have any idea what's in the book. But if it, in fact, contradicts Trump, it's not a surprise.
Testimony in the impeachment trial resumes today. Kobe Bryant will be mourned for an entire week in the country where he grew up. The Italian Basketball Federation says it has ordered a minute of silence to be observed for all games in every category for the entire week. The Federation says it's a small but heartfelt and deserved gesture to honor the life and memory of Kobe Bryant, an absolute champion who always had Italy in his heart. Kobe was and will always be linked to our country. Bryant, who lived in Italy between the ages of 6 and 13, was killed along with 8 other people in a helicopter crash yesterday in Calabasas, California. The circumstances surrounding the crash in Calabasas are unknown, and the investigation is ongoing. NTSB member Jennifer Hamady.
Our team will be looking at the history of the pilot and whatever crew was on board. We'll be looking at maintenance records of the helicopter. We will be looking at records of the owner and operator of the helicopter and a number of other things that we look at as part of the investigation.
Kobe Bryant was 41. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you so much. John, just a little vignette here. A family member in Shanghai, they were 3 hours in on a high-speed train, and they have returned to Shanghai on their Monday afternoon as well. And they said there's a lot of people doing that. Just, they live in Shanghai, so it's easy to do, but everybody's taking precautionary tone there to move towards the Pacific Rim.
Should also reflect on the passing of Kobe Bryant, which is absolutely
extraordinary,
tragic. And what Michael Barr did just then was perfect, for me at least, because he did grow up in Italy. Lost on a lot of people sometimes, spoke fluent Italian, was also an AC Milan fan as well, very connected to the country, even as recently as the last few months. Just absolutely tragic.
And part of being 17 and being a different 17 because of that European experience, I think, I will do a shout out. I see he's on with Fox this morning, Jim Gray, who did the first Kobe Bryant interview and the last Kobe Bryant interview in uniform, was just outstanding on that perspective of how different he was at 17 and 18. And John, some of that, I think, was the European experience.
the ability to transcend, I think, really defined his greatness. He went well beyond the world of basketball, far, far beyond. And I always find it fascinating when we talk about greatness. You know, the ability to be part of the 0.001% of everyone that plays basketball to make the NBA, and then still be part of the 0.001% of all of those people that were lucky enough to make it. And he truly was.
Yeah, that was extraordinary. I've got a whole bunch of family out in L.A., and there's a national, for those of you worldwide, there's a national moment for this, and also a Los Angeles that just simply is devastated as well.
Also his daughter, 13-year-old Gigi Bryant. Yeah. He was with her, a budding basketball star herself.
Absolutely tragic. Kobe Bryant has died, aged 41.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time, skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run.
Mix it. Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Intensifying concern about the economic and human impact of the deadly coronavirus is sending stocks, oil, and China's yuan tumbling while spurring haven assets. Treasuries are gaining, Italian bonds jumping after regional elections. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day. on Bloomberg. Right now, S&P futures are down about 45 points. Dow futures are down 410. NASDAQ futures down 163. The DAX in Germany's down 2.2%. The 10-year Treasury up 16/32 yield 1.62%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.44%. NYMEX crude oil is down 2.7% or $1.49 to $52.70 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.6% or $9.70 at $15.87.90 an ounce. The euro 1.1022 against the dollar. British pound 1.3070 and the yen at 108.97. And shares of Boeing are lower after reports that one of its planes crashed in Afghanistan. A 737-400 passenger plane reportedly crashed while carrying around 83 people. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Hey, Karen, thanks so much. Futures again, negative 45. Extra data checks this morning as well. Okay, 5 things you need to know. And thank you, Interactive Brokers, for your support here from the Interactive Broker Studios in New York. Lisa, we were there, and then Pharaoh sort of leaned over and asked the kind gentleman from Bridgewater about boom and bust. And John, it truly went viral on Twitter. What happened over the next number of hours, and then we milked the hell out of it as we are,
Well, it was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal interview. All of yours were. I've got to say, it was really enjoyable watching them. And I'm not just giving you lip service. I thought they were tremendous.
You are a little bit, but we'll take it. Carry on.
But honestly, it keyed up this really important debate. And there were a lot of people who just simply poo-pooed it and said, oh, yeah, famous last words, this is the peak. And just sort of, out of basically on its face, dismissed it. But his point was a really salient one. This idea that central banks have changed the course of economic cycles as we know them, and how does an investor trade around that? And that, frankly, has been the reality for the past decade, and it's been very tough for active managers to get alpha on that. And this has been sort of one agonizing feature among a lot of the top investors of the time. Taking a look at this, what is after this?
This was one view, and it was a rather extreme view, and I'd hate to come out of the World Economic Forum and suggest to our audience that one view was the consensus view, because it wasn't. There were many extremes, and a lot of the conversations we had around this particular discussion was incredibly polarized. I will say the consensus view coming out of Davos, though, from the CEOs on Wall Street, from the business community, investors, I would just say the consensus view coming into this year is that things stabilize and things chug along. Now, it doesn't mean that's the right view. It doesn't mean it's the wrong view. It's just the consensus view that I came away with.
Let's look at what's happening today, right? You have the fear of the coronavirus potentially spreading. And what do you have in terms of the implication for rate cuts? It's increasing. People are pricing in that the Federal Reserve will respond to any economic slowdown by a virus spreading in China by cutting rates further. They are the reaction function of last resort, and they are quick to make cuts. So this is sort of what's stabilizing volatility. People know that they're going to come to the rescue if there's a problem, and it is dampening volatility. How do you trade around that?
Well, the market's causing a problem for the Fed at the moment. 10s, 163, Tom. Well below the Fed funds
2 years
right
under
now.
a 145.
Flatter yield curve, flatter yield curve, flatter yield curve. And all of a sudden, the January Fed meeting this week just got a little bit more interesting. Not suggesting they're going to do anything, they're not, but just got a little bit more interesting.
Again, to me, the press conference and the arch issue, and we can make this one of our 5 things, can you reflate an economy? To me, that's the heart of it, and that we heard from a lot of people.
Yeah, Tom, I think you've hit the nail on the head. We've had the shift from the Fed, we've had the pivot, we've had the rate cuts, we've had the shift, the evolution of the reaction function. You're not going to get a repeat of the global easing cycle that we had last year, and if you do, wow, there really isn't going to be much ammunition left.
Well, today you're seeing an increase in the expectations for rate cuts, but you're also seeing a flattening yield curve for, I believe, the 5th or 6th straight day. And so the implication here is they can cut rates all they want, but to your point, Tom, they cannot reflate the economy. They have been unable to do so. They will be more unable to do so given the fact they don't have that much to cut.
And I see a correlated data screen as well. I want to go back to the idea, and I did this study this morning. I mean, you look at the equity markets roll over, and it's all 3% as well. Can you imagine, John, the angst if we had a real 10% correction? How rare.
Have you seen where crude is? WTI has a 52 handle.
I mean, this goes 52.68, Brent 58.96.
There were reports yesterday evening of rockets hitting the US Embassy in Baghdad. And here we are looking at a crude screen down 2-3 percentage points. The commodity screen full stop. You just look more broadly. Look at base metals. Copper down by 2 percentage points as well. We wake up to a real growth scare, Tom, that goes beyond luxury and beyond airline stocks. It's a lot more broader than that as we start a new week.
And Dr. Copper folds into a China study, and on the flu and the virus, what I've learned, and looking, folks, full disclosure, I studied this stuff in school, so I've got almost a passing understanding of it. But what's interesting to me is what Drew Armstrong and Max Neeson brought up, Lisa, which is the idea of, okay, a flu is not a good thing. That pros look at influenza as a serious medical illness, unlike the media, which is looking at the drama of Ebola or SARS.
Well, that's actually one thing. We were speaking with an epidemiologist on Friday, and he was saying, an infectious disease specialist, and he was saying, you say, is this worse than the flu? The flu is really bad, and that potentially could evolve into something that's catastrophic, which raises a question, why is this different? Why is this creating this much more of a potential disruption, and how much further can it go? But that said, I think it's really interesting to take a look at the introduction of vaccines and why there hasn't been more of, frankly, a focus on creating vaccines and having that response. And Max Neeson has been brilliant on this. You're right.
A little bit later today, we'll be catching up with Thomas Mullier as well, Bloomberg Healthcare editor out of Geneva on the World Health Organization, the World Health Organization. Yeah. So the view from the WHO coming up a little bit later this hour too, Tom.
And that view's been quiet because they're hugely scientific and they need data. And into every interview it takes time to put the data together. We'll do more on Kobe Bryant through the morning. Evan Novi-Williams with us, and Michael Barr, of course, and the whole Bloomberg Sports team have been looking at the sad story. Is there a British equivalent, John? I don't mean it as a joke, but is there a Kobe Bryant of English football?
I was thinking about the tragedy of yesterday and the parallels in world sport, and I was reminded of Ayrton Senna in Formula One, died racing. That was an absolute tragedy, top of his game. It's very, very hard to find the parallels because very few people make it in their sport the way Kobe Bryant did.
I just want to point out that LeBron James's that Kobe Bryant's last tweet was to LeBron James, continuing to move the game forward. King James, much respect, my brother. And it's a sort of very sad and also, poignant last Twitter post, considering what we're seeing.
And with the news flow, we should be clear, folks, that they still are under investigation and speaking to the families. And so we'll have, I'm sure, sometime today, a more formal statement from the authorities in and outside Los Angeles. Futures were worse earlier, a negative 53-ish, negative 55. Come up a little bit, negative 42. Dow futures negative 383. The VIX was a 19 at one point, 17.87. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time, skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio with the focus very much on markets worldwide as a headline crosses the Bloomberg that Chinese markets will resume trading February 3rd. That is according to people familiar with the matter. Equity futures here in the United States down hard, negative 1.3% on the S&P 500, Tom.
Carl Weinberg, very familiar with the Lunar New Year, and he said a 3 or 4 day shift doesn't mean all that much in terms of huge travel plans and really part of the fabric of society to make those movements. Right now, joining us is Societe Generale. Kit Jukes joins us on these strong correlations of the market. Kit, I'm observing that. How correlated is this move off a Chinese disease, Chinese virus?
It feels pretty correlated. It felt this morning as if it was just a single story. Stocks down. Safe haven currency strong. Anything trade China sensitive or oil sensitive. Weaker equities moving in the same way. We'll see what happens when your equity market really gets going in cash terms this afternoon. But it feels as if it's a knee-jerk reaction that's not correcting at the moment.
Within that, the bond market, where we're back to October lows, John, you'll know better than me on this in terms of spread dynamics as well. Is there an opportunity in bonds because you've made, if you believe in low interest rates, you've made so much of a year's move in a matter of days and weeks? I mean, how do you adjust tactically to the celebration of a year's move?
You remain bullish, but you don't go and invest your entire life savings right in them. Right, there's instantaneous. Look, I think we'll get 10-year note yields back down to certainly the other side of 1.5% at some point at the back end of this year. But then if you think that we're going to move from 1.25 to 1.75 instead of 1.75 to 2, then we've got another leg down, but we've done half the move, and that's probably the way to think about it. But it'll take evidence in the United States that the economy is feeling this. Otherwise, we're going to see money continue to go looking for certainly lower rates, lower yields in some of the markets in the Far East, because growth is going to be definitely impacted. We can speculate how much this might affect the U.S., but the Chinese economy is going to feel this for a while, and I think it also probably puts paid to hopes of some people that you might get German government bond yields, 10-year yields back into positive territory or anything like that. We're going to be stuck in negative territory for months.
Well, let's talk about it, Kit, because this is important. The recovery that we have seen, very young, very fragile. And we see it in the IFO out of Germany today. German business confidence really not terrific. Just how fragile is that recovery in Europe? And is it vulnerable to being knocked off course by what you see playing out in China right now, Kit?
Yes. I mean, again, at the bare minimum, we're going to lose a certain amount of time. It could be a short period of time, and then things get more or less back to normal, and the Chinese are more likely to ease monetary policy, more likely to ease fiscal policy on the back of this over time. But the momentum was just trying to shift back towards Germany getting away from the hits from trade, from Chinese weakness, from the auto downturn, and from the diesel scandal, and all of those things were sort of trying to feed themselves through the system. It's just going to take longer to get out of that now, and I think that puts a dampener on everything.
Kit, it's also this whole transpiring of the coronavirus and its spread is putting a damper on the whole weaker dollar story, and we're seeing the dollar the strongest since December 9th, 3 straight days of strengthening. Emerging market currencies having the biggest 3-day decline since November. How much does this potentially torpedo the consensus bet heading into 2020 that emerging market currencies would finally outperform in a significant way this year?
We've been nervous about the outlook for emerging market currencies this year because we've got a relatively gloomy view about how the year is going to progress for the U.S. economy. Emerging markets, to get money really flowing into them, need a combination of yield seeking, so low rate environment, plus a kind of U.S. economy that does okay, that kind of grows something like a consensus of 1.8% this year. This sort of ups the ante on the U.S. piece. In other words, emerging markets are going to have a really rough time if the U.S. economy looks as if it's growing significantly more slowly than that, as well, and that'll offset any of this kind of pressure flow in. So I think, to me, the jury was out in the sense of the market was taking an optimistic view of the global economic outlook this year, and that was feeding into a bit of relief for EM, but I think that's in trouble now.
You get to our boom-bust debate at Davos that we had, and John and I, of course, will drive this forward in the coming days and weeks here as well, into what we see this morning, a 2-3% equity correction, yields where they are, 2-year yield 1.4470. Can you hedge now? Is it efficacious to sit around a pro room and actually structure hedges where you either take in a premium or you pay out for the cost of doing the hedge?
Yes. It seems to me wise to take some hedges at this point, because risk assets might be correcting today, but they're still pretty expensive. And in a sense, the high correlations mean that the hedges become almost simpler in the sense that someone's got to show me what clever hedging looks like in this environment. But I would certainly want to have bonds in my portfolio for this risk, for this danger. I would want government debt and interest rate exposure. I wouldn't want a currency portfolio that had no Japanese yen in it, even if I've been very frustrated for the whole of January so far. I would want to continue to have those things because, at the end of the day, though, the reason that we've kind of feel as if the cycle is less significant is that the answer to everything is to ease monetary policy even further, and that gets equity markets to stabilize, spreads to stabilize, gets defaults are harder to manage at really low rates, and so we stretch the cycle out. And so the danger then comes back into the danger in those valuations.
Directly and indirectly, John, that was the theme we heard at Davos. It's just so easy to cut rates. It's to be Trumpian and to cut rates.
It gets harder when you start to run out of space, that's for sure. And the ECB has run out of space. Let's talk about Italy, shall we, Kit? 10-year Italian bond yields down 18 basis points and the euro doing nothing. Why?
The euro, once upon a time we had models where we put BTP Bund spreads into the euro, and so it would have it high. I don't think that works when the heart of the euro is that it's much more trade sensitive than the United States, it's more China sensitive than the United States. So it's bad news for Europe. So we're weighing these two things against each other of, a piece of news from the Far East that definitely is euro-dollar negative against a piece of domestic news in Italy that at least in terms of the bond market reaction, is euro positive. And look at the 13 basis point fall in Greek yields, by the way, as they have a re-rating. So, and those two outweigh each other. So you trade European politics at the moment in the bond market, and that's where you do this. I think in the currency market you go short the euro against the yen, or short the euro against the Swiss franc, but you don't buy it, I'm afraid.
Kitju, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. With Societe Generale. John, that brings up one of the shining moments for me and a surprise. The Greek Prime Minister, you go, okay, you get the Greek Prime Minister, you're like, great, how are we going to make this work? And boy, did that interview pop.
Wow. I overheard a conversation with an investor and the Greek Prime Minister, and the investor turned around to him and said, you are a legend in the hedge fund community. After the year the Greek assets had last year, absolutely phenomenal.
Are you looking third or fourth week of May in Mykonos?
What are you booking?
I'm thinking fourth week.
Okay, I'll go third.
You guys want to book your travel plans?
I'll go third.
We're going through Abramowitz Travel.
Okay.
So
would you like recommendations?
I'm gold on Expedia. Yeah. I'll get us a discount.
Go ahead. Go do that.
Let me tell you, being gold on Expedia doesn't really get much. Well, I get you much at all.
Well, because of time, we're not going to dive into that now, but that seems like an entire 5 things you need to know. Right now, the Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report, brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, atop 100 National University in the latest U.S. News and World Report college rankings. Learn more at news.njit.edu. Here's John Tucker.
And Tom, John, and Lisa. Let's see what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. With China's death toll from the coronavirus climbing to at least 80 and with 5 cases in the U.S., let's take a closer look at exactly what this is. The virus is a strain of the coronavirus family of pathogens. Coronaviruses are known for infecting primarily bats, pigs, and other animals, and also for their ability to migrate from animals to humans, and also from one human to another. They come in multiple strains, ranging in severity from the common cold to some of the most lethal infections threatening humans, such as severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS, and the Middle East respiratory syndrome, known as MERS. Now, coronaviruses are named for the crown-like spikes on their surfaces. The Wuhan variety, which the WHO refers to as 2019 nCoV, appears less virulent than SARS at the moment and is most life-threatening to the ill and elderly. The incubation period may be up to 2 weeks, which means fever and other symptoms may not appear for as many as 2 weeks after infection. They can mutate readily after jumping to human host. That would enable easier spread of the contagion, for which there's no effective treatment or vaccine. They spread through close contacts, sneezes, or coughs. And there are currently 4th-generation cases in which sick individuals have set off chain reactions. Its genetic sequence has been submitted to several online data sharing portals. That's where public health specialists are now swapping information. Yeah, that is today's Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report. John, Tom, and Lisa.
John Tucker, thank you very much, sir. It's time for the news from New York City, or News Worldwide, brought to you by Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, John, Tom, Lisa. A team of investigators. They are in Southern California, where NBA legend Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, and 7 others were killed in a helicopter crash. Authorities in Calabasas say the crash site is the length of a football field, and there are just small pieces of the helicopter. The circumstances surrounding the crash are unknown. There's a new report that President Trump told his then National Security Advisor John Bolton in August he wanted to continue freezing aid to Ukraine until the government there investigated a political rival. The demand was outlined in a New York Times report citing an unpublished manuscript by Bolton, who was fired by the president in September. The defense in the impeachment trial of Donald Trump begins today for a second day. Bloomberg's Ed Maxter reports the theme is that the president did nothing that rises to an impeachable offense.
Defense consultant Alan Dershowitz says the prosecution hasn't come close to a case for removal from office.
Even if the factual allegations are true, which are highly disputed, in which the defense team will show contrary evidence, but even if true, they did not allege impeachable offenses.
But Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says there need to be witnesses to convict or exonerate Donald Trump.
The truth means witnesses and documents. And I think the case that the president's lawyers made even makes stronger the case for witnesses and documents.
And debate and vote on witnesses is expected this week. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John Thomas.
Yeah, Michael Barr, thanks so much.
Thanks,
I'm British Airways. I'm getting killer service. I mean, they're serving me the 18-year Macallan, and I'm like, what is this about?
That's because you're gold on BA.
It is. I learned at the end.
I don't get that service on BA.
The flight attendant goes, I loved what you said to the Dutch Prime Minister about Virgil van Dijk.
What did
I said,
say?
what? And her husband watches every minute of what we knew all the dirt about Davos and all that. But, that was the impact, John, of your penetrating analysis with the Dutch Prime Minister
analysis
over the gentleman from Liverpool.
Audience worldwide who missed the Mark Rutte interview, the Dutch Prime Minister, Tom starts the conversation as soon as he walks into our studio, which is on the roof in the cold, and turns around to him and says, tell us about Virgil van Dijk, who's the centre-back for Liverpool and one of the best defenders in the world. I was actually very, very proud of Tom, who managed to bring up football when it mattered and when it was relevant. It was quite impressive, Tom. It's nice.
By the way, oil prices down more than $10.
We talked about that earlier.
Yeah. I know, but I just can't get over it. We're going to do it again.
We'll do it. Stay with us. Lisa Bramwitz, John Farrow, Tom King.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. A DraftKings fantasy baseball player filed a would-be class action lawsuit against Major League Baseball, MLB Advanced Media, the Houston Astros, and the Boston Red Sox over the unfolding sign-stealing scandal. Christopher Olson seeks to recover damages for defendants' wrongful promotion of fantasy baseball wagering competitions that they caused to be and knew or should have known were corrupt and dishonest. It comes after an MLB investigation concluded the Astros and Red Sox used a camera system to steal signs. MLB is supporting the U.S. women's softball team, which already is assured a spot in the Tokyo Olympics, while the American men's baseball team struggles to qualify. The league announced an agreement to become presenting sponsor of the Women's Stand Beside Her Tour, a slate of exhibition games leading up to the Olympic tournament in July. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Global
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Intensifying concern about the economic and human impact of the deadly coronavirus, sending stocks, oil, and China's yuan tumbling while spurring haven assets. Treasuries are gaining. Italian bonds jumping after regional elections. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 44 points this morning. Dow futures down 405. And NASDAQ futures are down 153. That's down 1.7%. DAX in Germany is down 2.2%. 10-year Treasury up 18/32, yield 1.62%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.44%. NYMEX crude oil down 2.5% or $1.36 at $52.83 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.7% or $10.30 at $15.8850 an ounce. The euro 1.1021 against the dollar. British pound 1.3058, and the yen is at 108.98. Shares of Boeing lower after reports that one of its planes crashed in Afghanistan. A 737-400 passenger plane reportedly crashed while carrying around 83 people. Boeing shares down 1.5%. And U.S. homebuilder D.R. Horton reported quarterly orders that beat expectations as low mortgage rates fuel demand. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate that. Again, futures at negative 44. Some stability here after being negative 53 earlier. We have tried to bring you perspective on the virus in Wuhan. We've had some wonderful comments from China. China this morning, from a news standpoint, really shut down with the holidays and all that. So we've gone global with Drew Armstrong and Mac Neeson. And right now from Geneva, Switzerland, our single best World Health Organization expert, Tom Milliard, joins us this morning. What are they doing at the World Health Organization today, not only in Geneva, Tom, but spread out across their world? What's their to-do list in the Geneva afternoon?
Well, the head of the WHO right now is actually in China, in Wuhan, at Ground Zero, meeting with people and, showing that this is the top of the agenda right now. The biggest thing is collecting data to be able to map out the spread of the epidemic. What they really need is data, not just on when the cases were reported, but data on when the onset of the symptoms started, and they need more complete data because any change in the number of reported cases or the number of deaths changes the mortality rate.
Do we know the virology of the virus? My experience is they mutate, et cetera, and it's really hard to actually know what you're talking about. Do we have a handle on what the actual virus is?
Not exactly. That's what they're still trying to do because, in order to make any sort of treatment for the virus, they need to understand it better.
Thomas, there's also a question about the reaction in China. One of the most alarming reports that really got markets in jitters was this idea that China doesn't have enough equipment, isn't necessarily separating out patients with the coronavirus from other patients in hospitals just because they don't have the space. How effective has the containment process been in China, regardless of the quarantine that's keeping an entire city in their homes?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of criticism about the policy because it could be that it just is too late. It's such a draconian policy, keeping 50 million people in their places, that it's raising a lot of issues. There's a lot of issues there. So far, China is trying to actually build new hospitals as we speak in Wuhan, and so it's really a game of catch up, and they don't have the facilities that they ideally would have at the moment.
Thomas, you know better than we do about the WHO, and there is some criticism of the World Health Organization at the moment, and their reluctance to declare what we're seeing playing out in China and worldwide at the moment as a public health emergency of international concern. Thomas, why are they holding off, one? And two, what would happen if they do make that declaration this week?
Well, they've said that they might decide. I mean, when they delayed making the decision, they said they'd probably meet again within the next 10 days. The thing is, it's a really political process. The WHO deal better with the scientific side of things, and what they're scared of is that countries, if they declare it an international public health emergency, that some countries might enact barriers to travel and trade that are more stringent than necessary.
Right now, I'm wondering about the efficacy of other countries' response to this virus. In other words, is there any evidence that the spread of it to a number of different nations around the world is actually causing intra-country spreading, person to person, not within China, but say in Vietnam or in South Korea?
Yeah, so far the evidence is really limited. Of the 30-some cases that have been, the 30 cases reported abroad, almost all of those were actually people who had been in Wuhan. And so far there really isn't evidence that it's really going person to person outside of China.
Tom, thank you so much. Tom Mullane with Bloomberg News in Geneva, Switzerland, and with his true focus on the World Health Organization as well. And then it goes to CDC in Atlanta. And I would urge you folks, if you want to get smarter on the terminology here, the media does a good job, a commendable job, but the authority is to be CDC, and they've got beautiful explainers, Lisa, on, epidemic. Okay, I guess we're in an epidemic. We're not in a pandemic. There's no question about that. You wonder how that path goes coming up.
Well, there's a cross-section of deadliness and infectiousness, and that's sort of the cross-section that you need for a pandemic. And right now, the question that I have that I'm not getting a handle on is just how infectious is this versus the inability to actually respond to it in an effective way. The idea that there isn't enough equipment for protective suits and other gear in China, that they aren't able to actually separate the patients. How much is this easily preventable in another nation? I don't have a sense of that.
Well, I look at it like the incubation, like John has come back from Switzerland.
The 2 weeks.
He's incubating with a plague.
Great.
You okay over there?
I'm just reading a nice little message. They say 3rd or 4th week in Greece. Either way, we can help you get there and would love to be your travel agency of choice. Let's go. Opa, Greece. From the Lay Travel
Thank you for listening. And
thank you very much. It's very kind of them, isn't it?
It's great.
He's also taking the role from me, so I don't have to make the travel plans.
Well, no, you get to come.
The surveillance travel plans. I will say it does raise a question, though, about international travel and how much this could damage.
Huge. I mean, I brought it down to United Airlines. I can't remember the flight number. Shanghai to Los Angeles nonstop. I mean, what do you actually do X number of days from now if this expands out?
John, did they swab you when you were coming back to JFK?
Yeah, they dumped it.
I mean, if I sound poorly, is this what this is about? Because I've got a cough.
Do you have
Lisa's over with me today.
If you were sat in the freezing cold like Tom and I were last week, speaking for hours, John, you'd have a cough too.
Davos tip, the coffee mug, it ain't coffee. That's you sort of, if you're pickled along the way, you don't get the plague.
Wait, so...
Is that what you were drinking?
Yeah, thank you.
I didn't know that.
Full disclosure.
Futures negative 47. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
Why has JD Power...
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
We've all had the odd great idea, like careering down that black run when you've never even worn a pair of skis before. Or that legendary Christmas when you tried to cook a turkey in the microwave. Well, how about trying something new? Like treating yourself to a brand new Seat from our best ever range. Because when you request a test drive before the 31st of January, you'll get a whopping £1,000 off the perfect model for you. Now that's got to be a great idea. Just visit seat.co.uk to request your test drive.
Request a test drive online and receive downloadable voucher. Orders until 31st of January. Register from 1st of January 2020. UK 18 plus. Excludes Me Electric and Taraco 0% offer. Retail sales of new cars are participating dealers only. Cannot be used with any other voucher. T's and C's apply.
Hello, I'm your captain for today's Virgin Atlantic flight. Please drop everything and pay close attention to the following announcement. The sail is now on. Our crew are ready to take your bags and stresses away. The cocktails are ready to serve, the movies are loaded, and we're all set for takeoff to the Caribbean. So, take your seat in our award-winning economy class. We're ready to go when you are.
The Virgin Atlantic sail. Fly amazing for less. For more details, visit virginatlantic.com.
Heroes. They're the ones we turn to in our darkest hour. Like when you blow a fuse and the lights go off. Whether it's electrics to heating, plumbing to plastering. At Local Heroes, every job completed by an expert tradesperson comes with a 12-month British Gas guarantee when you pay online. So, if it needs fixing, there's a local hero for that. To get a quote, search Local Heroes. Terms and conditions apply.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, taking the long view on prison.
In 100 years, we're not going to be locking human beings in cages. Because we'll understand then, as we understand about slavery now, that it was immoral, that it just didn't work.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
The move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
First time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The good news is the economy is strong. The bad news is the economy is strong.
Financial crises take a really long time to recover from.
Finance.
The strong job market's pulling people back in.
You can't have for very long, monetary union without a fiscal union.
Investment.
What we preach is extreme diversification. It's hard to have sustained productivity without capital investment.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow, Tom Keene, Lisa Abramowitz with us as well. Back together again, the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios in New York. Lots going on, including equity futures negative 53 earlier, then up to negative 45, and a little bit of an ebb right here. Dow futures negative 426 as well. In the bond market, I guess it's a move, 7 basis points on the 10-year yield, and we've got really our interview of the day on fixed income coming up here as well. So lots going on this morning. John, I look at it, and to get prepared for the real yield, I really want you to bring in our next guest, because I know you got a 5-day start here in the bond market. And
thanks for that.
To speak to basically the world's authority on 2-year yield and short-term paper dynamics, that would be a good place to start.
Why don't you just bring Tony in yourself
Monday.
now you've done all of that?
Joining us now, Anthony Crescenza joins us from PIMCO.
John, Lisa.
As well, with his work
from Davos.
on the short-term paper market. Do the people in Davos understand short-term paper? When you hear all the blather out of Davos, are you going?
Groups like that with 100 billionaires, they care about interest rates, but they have such diverse interests. It's like when I go to visit family office groups. I know can be an eclectic group. They don't care about duration, yield curves, repo.
Yeah,
they care about the businesses that they tend to operate or own, and it's just a much different field. They just want to know that interest rates will stay low enough for them to borrow money.
144, 162, 2.07 on a 30-year bond. What does that signal to the Fed?
shows just a slight leaning toward interest rate cuts. The Federal Reserve's policy rate is in a range of between 150 and 175. It's the repo rate, the financing rate for securities, is in about 157. So with yields below that, any investor that's buying a 2-year in the 140s and borrowing money to do that is losing money. But think about the amount of loss. It's tiny. Right. It's a bet on perhaps there'll be an interest rate cut to reduce the financing costs at some point. So it's just a mild bet on an interest rate cut.
Mr. Crescenzi, with his true legit pro status, just explained my investment strategy. Borrow so you could start to trade losing money.
Well done, John.
Thank you.
I will say, there's sort of a real existential question right now facing markets, especially as they price in further rate cuts this year. On Friday, HYG, the biggest high-yield bond ETF, saw its largest one-day outflow ever in its history of $1.4 billion. And it's unclear what exactly was behind this trade, but it sort of highlights the skittishness around risky assets, even in the face of further easing. Has the Fed run out of its ability to further boost some of the valuations of risk assets, such as high-yield bonds that have benefited tremendously?
Bloomberg's Michael McKee will be in Washington tomorrow and may get a chance to ask questions for Chair Powell. And perhaps Michael should ask him, are you tired of us asking you questions that seem to suggest that you can solve all the world's problems? Because markets,
he'll say yes,
markets seem to rely upon the Federal Reserve and liquidity. Liquidity can't offset uncertainty. Look, last year investors had to be policy experts. Those who were following macroeconomics couldn't fare all that well. You had to be an expert in policy matters. Now, because of the virus issue, you've got to be an expert. And Tom, I heard you talking about various terms regarding the medical issue that's facing the world. But these are not macroeconomic issues, and so there are issues that the Federal Reserve can't solve. Where growth will emerge from in the future is likely to be from fiscal authorities taking action to invest in people and in infrastructure, because those are the only major sources of growth in the long run.
Tony, big debate that Tom and I had last week about the balance sheet of the Fed. Is it or isn't it QE? This conversation drives pretty much everybody insane, because when you hear someone say it's QE, there's someone on the other side shouting, no, it isn't. James Gorman of Morgan Stanley came out pretty clearly. He thinks it's QE. Tony, what are you telling clients when they ask you about this? Because I imagine it comes up a lot.
Quantitative easing, but it always was. It's just that we didn't have the nomenclature until the financial crisis. The Federal Reserve has always printed money. Remember, Milton Friedman said it way back over 50 years ago, we don't need a Federal Reserve. We simply can print money at about 5% per year, which is a nominal rate of growth in the economy. That printing that Milton Friedman wanted was quantitative easing. It had to come about in some form or fashion, and typically by buying T-bills, and that's what the Fed's doing now, $60 billion per month.
Okay, we've got quantitative easing, as you say. We have the Fed possibly easing if the market is correct by the end of this year. What does that do in terms of what you want to buy?
It shouldn't. The liquidity, as I said earlier, can offset the high degree of uncertainty that exists in markets. Today's reaction to the virus story and the recent reactions simply show that the markets were sated with uncertainty and that economies are teetering on the edge of stall speed, and that it doesn't take much to tip people, to tip economies, to create a condition that's different for investors. And so we'd say, nearing a 12th year of economic expansion, that you should be going up in quality and in liquidity anyway. So, Lisa, you mentioned the ETF that saw big outflows. The problems in the money market last year are endemic to that market, too. There's a common thread, which is that intermediaries, those that go between buyers and sellers, didn't perform their function during the repo crisis, and they won't perform their function in the way that was customary before the crisis when investors want to transfer risk, which means sell. It'll be a game of hot potato like you've never seen. And so we want to be very careful about the liquidity in portfolios when constructing them to go up. So this could mean reducing investment grade in favor of agency mortgage-backed securities.
Hot potatoes module 14 in CFA level 2.
Well, Tony, a couple of concepts we need to pick up on there, and let's talk about exposure to corporate credit risk. That was the story last year. If you didn't have the exposure, you didn't have the performance.
Right. Correct.
Why is this year different?
Well, if you're long-term minded, one has to think in terms of a market cycle. So last year, in part of the cycle, it was a very good year for credit, but there'll be a down part of the cycle. We don't know when that'll hit. Friday was an example with the outflows. It could happen, and when, because of the intermediaries aren't playing the traditional role, spreads will widen, credit spreads, meaning yields will rise above treasuries more than they should based on fundamental values and future cash flows. That'll be a great opportunity. So you'll get that back, what you missed last year in that period of stress. And we don't know when that'll be. But final note is this is probably a coupon clipping year for the bond market. Interest rates won't move much. They'll be range bound. Credit spreads probably won't move much either, and you'll simply clip coupons. But be careful about risk taking.
A lot of people have warned about the liquidity mismatched ETFs, particularly corporate debt ETFs. This has been an ongoing boogeyman for a while. People saying, look, you've got the actual shares that trade like stocks, the underlying that trade, in an antiquated fashion. This is going to be a problem. It hasn't been. And in fact, an entire ecosystem has risen up around it to prevent that. And some people say this actually adds liquidity to the market. Yes. Why is this time different?
Well, it's first, let me start by saying that PIMCO favors positive. I'm going to explain what this means. Positive carry portfolios this year, not negative carry. So we want to have credit exposure this year. We're not saying to get out of these assets that people say you should be fearful of. We simply say ensure that the assets you own are good on a standalone basis. This could mean for us, for example, purchasing short-dated high yield, where our credit analysts have said this company XYZ 2 years from now will pay you back, and that yield might be in the 3s or even near 4, and that's not bad compared to the Bloomberg Barclays aggregate yielding 2.2. It's a way to beat the market, self-liquidating, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, we are mindful that you could play the game for a long time, but we don't want negative carry portfolios. We're simply finding substitutes for credit.
How much of your year view have you made in 3 weeks? I mean, PIMCO came into the year making global headlines. Not a new normal, a phrase from another time, but a slower call, if you would. Do you feel like you've made 8 months in 3 weeks? I mean, frame that timeline.
No, I mean, in terms of the alpha generation, we're benefiting now from being somewhat underweight generic corporate credit. We have substitutes in place. It could be non-agency subprime mortgages that we think will return close to 4%. Not bad relative to the investment-grade corporate bond market.
Subprime mortgage debt, that's what you're buying?
Well, we own a fair amount of them. There's still a high amount of illiquidity and a complexity premium in those types of bonds. We wouldn't own large amounts in terms of the individual portfolio, but we find that a very good substitute for credit because loan-to-value ratios in the housing market relative to the leverage in the corporate bond market look very good, and we think would not be hit in a downturn because the housing market we think is sturdy.
Tony, thank you so much. Tony Crescenzi,
thank you.
He is with PIMCO this morning. Futures exactly -50, Dow futures at -4 at 51. With the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, John, Lisa, thank you very much. Investigators are trying to figure out the cause of yesterday's helicopter crash carrying Kobe Bryant and 8 others. Bryant's helicopter plunged into a rugged hillside in Calabasas, California, with an impact that scattered debris over an area the size of a football field and killed everyone aboard. The accident unleashed an outpouring of grief from admirers around the country who mourned the sudden loss of the all-time basketball great who spent his entire 20-year career with the Los Angeles Lakers. This man spoke outside the Staples Center.
I think his legacy is going to be one of determination and one of on the court and in terms of sports to never give up, man, and always have that killer instinct and that drive.
Kobe Bryant was 41. New revelations are being reported in former National Security Advisor John Bolton's upcoming book that President Trump linked Ukrainian aid to investigations of the Bidens. On the campaign trail in Cedar Rapids, Iowa yesterday, Democratic presidential candidate and Senator Elizabeth Warren was asked about it.
What does it mean to have trial in America if you don't have witnesses? And now we have potential witnesses coming forward saying that they have direct, relevant information. We need witnesses to have a fair trial.
This morning, President Trump tweeted, the Democrat-controlled House never even asked John Bolton to testify. It is up to them, not up to the Senate. China has expanded sweeping efforts to contain the coronavirus by postponing the end of this week's Lunar New Year holiday to keep the public at home and avoid spreading infection. The death toll rose to 81 with more than 2,800 cases. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Bard. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Bard, thanks so much. The four digits we're watching 10-year yield, John, for 7 full basis points in, lower yields, 1.6132. It won't give it up this morning.
Some really big moves out there, Tom, and you see it playing out in the commodity complex as well. Copper down hard, off by 2.3%. Brent off by 3 percentage points. And similarly on WTI, $52.50 on WTI.
And I'm also looking at another way of looking at it. The pool of securities with negative yields surged by $1.2 trillion last week. That was the biggest last week alone. That was the largest weekly increase since at least 2016 when Bloomberg started tabulating this.
So it was like 15, 16, 17 trillion. We added $1 trillion from where we were last week?
Correct, just showing the sort of the dive lower in yields.
Point,
the tipping point.
Be careful with that, though, because it only takes a couple of basis points move on some securities to build things up again by a whole lot.
We were trying to do some sophisticated math there, John.
Well, let's say you had a pool of debt that was yielding 0.01%, and it was worth 500 mil, and then it moved a basis point or two.
Sure, fair enough. This isn't necessarily as catastrophic or massive as people think. But I would just say,
what 10-year yields are doing in treasuries.
Honestly, but to me, it highlights the scope, the vast amount of this debt out there, and sort of the magnitude that just a little move can make.
I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you.
It's okay, you can.
10-year yields, 161.
It's a sensitive job.
On a US 10-year debt, 7 basis points. I'm so poorly. I'm going to make your life hell. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Influential conversation.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run. Mix it up. Skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up. Run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn.
First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Remain under pressure since the last time we spoke amid the coronavirus worries. Dow futures down 469 points. S&P's dropped 51 and NASDAQ futures declined by 171. The U.S. 10-year yield falls to 1.61%. Gold is up 13. Oil is under pressure. And Shanghai remained closed overnight for the Lunar New Year, while European markets are also under pressure, led by 2% losses in the UK, France, and Germany. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 10 o'clock, new home sales, and at 10:30, the Dallas Fed. Regarding earnings this morning, D.R. Horton revenue beat estimates. And in other news, Google's price target raised to $16.50 at Mizuho, and Amazon's price target was raised to $2,300 over at Benchmark. Wrapping things up, Lazard was raised to outperform at KBW, Estee Lauder cut to market perform at Oppenheimer, and Chipotle raised to neutral over at UBS with a price target of $900. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Thrilled you're with us. Thank you for listening. Corpus Christi, Texas. Charles emails in. Got a love note from Charles. Loved what we're doing. He's calling from Sandy's Diner in Corpus Christi.
I got the love note too. Is he cheating on me?
Yeah, morning tacos. You know, he's having morning tacos at Sandy's in Corpus Christi.
Sent us some nice thoughts about the coverage last week. And thank you to our audience for everyone that wrote in last week. Yeah. Really appreciate your support. It really does mean a lot.
Huge response on the boom and bust debate. And John and Lisa will carry that debate forward through the day. Right now, we circle back to a smart interview. We got a redux this morning, John, on China and this terrible virus.
Yeah, the epicenter of all the price action you see on your screens today. It goes back to China. It goes back to the spread of the coronavirus. And I'm pleased to say we can get some fantastic insight now from Drew Armstrong, Bloomberg team leader for US healthcare. Drew, when something like this breaks, how does the world of healthcare respond?
Well, I think one of the things that you have seen over the last week or two with this is the entire kind of global mechanism of public health surveillance swing into action. And some of that, despite all of the very scary headlines coming out of China, has been, I think, reassuring. I was actually at the pediatrician's office on yesterday morning, and even they have a sign up there saying, "Have you been to Wuhan, China? If you have, please tell us right away." And some of the early patients we have, we've gotten very, very lucky in the U.S. I mean, the first guy who showed up in Washington walked into the clinic with his cell phone, told his doctor, "I was just in China and I think I have this." He said, holding up the Google results. That's really lucky. I mean, remember the Ebola patient we had in New York? That guy got on the subway and went to a bowling alley. So we have been lucky so far with good patients and good public health responses happening.
Parse, is it a virus like the fear of Ebola, SARS, and the rest? Or is it a virus like 1919, and let's call it the flu?
I think right now this looks more like, a lot of comparisons have been made to SARS and to the flu as well. This is a respiratory virus. It creates pneumonia-like symptoms. The people that it has killed so far, from the reports we have, tend to be older, sicker, have what are called comorbidities. That said, I mean, you don't want to discount that. There are a lot of older, sicker people with comorbidities around the world, and those are vulnerable folks you want to take good care of. So it is a
he
serious
just looked down,
thing.
By the way.
And
I'm not going to create controversy. Carry on, Drew.
And the thing you worry about with something like this is the size of the denominator. Right now the spread is still relatively limited, even with a low fatality rate. What you don't want is this to become an endemic disease around the world.
Over the weekend, it seems like the narrative has shifted into high gear. We went from this isn't that big of a deal in terms of global economic impact. China can contain it. Their response has been much more transparent and proactive than the last time we saw something similar. It seems like that narrative has changed. Do the facts on the ground justify that?
You know, I think one of the things you always see happen in a situation like this, whether it's a outbreak large or small, the very things that you do to try and stop an outbreak, you know, think about how disease gets transmitted. You don't want people around each other. You don't want them coughing around each other. You don't want them shaking hands. All of those things, that's how business gets done. I mean, so by necessity, you are going to slow economic activity in service of the longer term goal of trying to stop the spread of this thing. That is going to be disruptive. We're already seeing commentary coming out of companies in China. This is one of their biggest tourist seasons. I mean, essentially, you know, Christmas has more or less been canceled for a lot of people over there. It's a really, really, really big deal. What the long-term impact of that is, I think we're probably going to have to wait and see. But it is a necessary situation where public health is going to trump economic activity for a lot of people at the center of this.
Drew, a big question around the WHO, the World Health Organization, and why they're holding off on declaring this outbreak of the virus a public health emergency of international concern. Why are they holding off?
I think you need to differentiate whether or not this is still primarily a regional China issue or an international issue. What we haven't seen very much of at all has been secondary transmission outside of China. That means people who got infected in China giving it to people in their home countries. Mm-hmm. That is what happens when you have a virus that goes from being endemic in one place or having an outbreak in one place to having outbreaks in multiple places. And that's when WHO steps in and says, this is now an international issue. You're always going to have people who are sick getting on airplanes and going there. The question is, do they spread it to other people? Does this become an outbreak in other countries, not just an outbreak in China?
True, we're not allowed to fly together. China, the Gulf Stream on the way back. I went through BA. I'm at JFK, and there was an ANA flight from Tokyo. I don't mean to make any jokes about it, but it wasn't a few. Many, many people off the Tokyo flight had the face masks. Do they work?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you're talking about a disease that is transmitted through, you cough, you get a respiratory disease. Think about when you have a cold. You cough, you sneeze, you have a runny nose.
I give it to Lisa.
All of those things are those are all.
This is just basically a sample. We literally have our Purell. Would you like some? Here,
I would love some. We can Purell.
Right.
I'm an active Purell user. As someone who has a
cough for like 10 years.
But no, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, think about coughing or sneezing in a small contained space, be it a airplane,
or a radio
subway car, a radio studio,
where you touch all the keyboards.
That's pretty classic disease transmission. That's why we have cold and flu season around the world. Those are the types of places that you worry about. So anything that stops either you from, when you cough because you're wearing a mask, getting those droplets out in the air, or from you inhaling them. I mean, those are standard infection control measures, as are washing your hands, Purelling your hands, doing all the things that you do during cold and flu season to stop you from getting sick. You continue to want to do in regards to this. Those are just basic infection control practices.
When Lisa what we call folks tosses to me, she Purells the radio button after she tosses to me. Drew Armstrong, very valuable. Seriously, I love this combination of Bloomberg expertise and Mr. Armstrong, Matt Neeson, Tom Millier over in Geneva. Like, we're really trying to pull in guys that actually do this every day.
Very cool.
Can you pass a Purell, please?
Yeah, please. Here you go. It's really effective to continue to bathe yourself in it. I will say that when you talk about the economic impact and what Drew was talking about, very important also to note, China's economy is much more dependent on services.
What are you doing?
I've never used this stuff.
Wait, you've never used it before? That explains the cough.
So much satisfaction out of doing that.
You feel like you're protecting yourself?
It's really strange. What are you doing? It's just weird, TK.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fair housing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Hello, I'm your captain for today's Virgin Atlantic flight. Please drop everything and pay close attention to the following announcement. The sail is now on. Our crew are ready to take your bags and stresses away. The cocktails are ready to serve, the movies are loaded, and we're all set for takeoff to the Caribbean. So, take your seat in our award-winning economy class. We're ready to go when you are.
The Virgin Atlantic sail. Fly amazing for less. For more details, visit virginatlantic.com.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Mary?
So I know it's tempting to pour used cooking oil straight down the sink, but I spoke to the local council and they said the best way to get rid of oil or fat is to collect it, once it's cooled down, of course, in a used container. And then you can scoop it out and put it in the bin.
Cooking oils and fats block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance. For our audience worldwide, we're live on Bloomberg Radio. Risk off to start the week. Equity futures down 48 on the S&P 500, negative 1.5%. We see this bleeding into the bond market as well. Treasury yields coming down by around about 6 basis points to 162. Lows for the year. The curve the flattest of the year as well. 2s versus 10s, 18 basis points separating them. In foreign exchange, the bid where you expect it to be. The yen, the Swissy outperforming. And in commodities, down hard for base metals. Copper, negative 1.91%. And crude lower too. Off session lows, but still below $53 a barrel on WTI. Brent crude south of 60 at $59.13, Tom.
Yields come in. I mean, we're watching yields, I think, more than anything as well. On the economic front, of course, we go to that Fed meeting. We get some housing data. We don't get a wall of data into the Fed meeting.
We've got Bank of England on Thursday. We've got some China PMIs at the back end of the week worth watching as well.
That.
Look out for that.
Why don't you bring in Ian, or do you want to get football out of the way first?
I think we should probably do that first, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
I imagine that's what he's fired up about.
Yeah,
Ian Shepherdson. Pantheon Macroeconomics founder and chief economist, also of Newcastle. I can tell you, exclusive on this programme a couple of months back, that Ian gave up his season ticket to his beloved Newcastle United. And the latest news coming out of the Wall Street Journal over the weekend, that the Saudis are interested in buying his beloved Newcastle United. First reaction, Ian Shepherdson, please.
My first reaction is out of the frying pan into the fire, really. You know, we're going to potentially exchange one terrible owner for another, which is backed by a man of, shall we say, questionable character. So I'm not thrilled.
You're not thrilled. There's a character to this, folks, for our American audience. Newcastle, it's fun to watch. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Amazing. Northeast of the country.
Why are they different, John?
St. James's Park is just this phenomenal stadium with this incredible fan base.
It's like a Wrigley Field thing, but
Newcastle United have been a yo-yo club over the last 10 years or so, and I'm sure Ian would echo that. They drop down a league, they come back up, but the fans have always filled out the stadium, no matter what happens. In the 90s, they almost won the league a couple of times. I think second place in a Premiership in the late 90s, Ian. But until this year, as you say, something changed. People like yourself said, we've had enough.
Yeah, about 10,000 people didn't renew their season tickets. They just had enough of this appalling ownership. So everyone has been rooting for a change. It's just, if he'd given us a list of potential owners, Mohammed bin Salman probably wouldn't have been top of the list. He definitely wouldn't have been top of the list.
I do have to wonder on a day like today, I'm sure that football is getting you excited, but I also think I'm looking right now at the NASDAQ, and it's poised for its biggest daily decline if it continues, nearly down 2% of the year, and we were talking about a 1% decline on Friday. Are economics interesting you more than football today, or do you feel like today the sort of scare that's going on with the coronavirus doesn't affect the economics complex to the degree that people seem to be implying by the price action?
Yeah, I mean, this to me is a combination of a fear-based sell-off and also an excuse to take profits after the run that we've had in the markets over the last few months. So, if the market had been flat for the last 3 months, I suspect the sell-off would be rather smaller on the back of the virus story. But, we've had a big run-up, so this is an opportunity to take some profits and regroup.
Yeah.
So, this is not an economic story at all. I mean, from an economic perspective, the U.S. Actually, I've just upgraded my U.S. forecast. I'm feeling a bit more cheerful about.
Well,
that's
right.
Was substantially absorbed.
Right where I wanted to go, and of course this ties in with your colleague Freya Beamish as well. Reframe the Pantheon growth forecast for the United States, and then Freya's work for China. What's your statistic now for the United States?
Yeah, well, so, I've just moved up my number for this year to 2% from 1.5%, which might not sound like a huge increase, but actually 2% is not far off the growth rate that we've seen in the post-crash era. We've been a little bit stronger than that, so that, I've got some discount in, some hit from the trade war, but most of it, I think, has been absorbed. And then to your point about, Freya's view about China, eventually we are going to see a turnaround there. You can see it in the PMIs, and obviously we get the next manufacturing PMIs out of China later this week. They're certainly not going down anymore. The Caixin, the unofficial PMI from China, has shot up in the last few months. We need to see that coming through in the hard data, that's for sure. But, you can't look at those China numbers now and say that things are still going down. And eventually, that ought to be transmitting to some extent to the rest of the world as well, including the US. Even though, of course, the tariffs get in the way. They're a barrier that prevents full transmission of China's incipient upturn into the US. But they don't completely stop it. So, I do think we're probably at the low now for the US business surveys, the ISM and the PMI, which have been terrible, but I think we're probably at the low, and my guess is that the consumer's going to keep chugging on, and the housing market's looking pretty great. So I've pulled my numbers higher, and what that means ultimately is that the labour market probably continues to tighten, and I'm kind of looking at unemployment getting towards 3% by the end of the year, which in a normal year, that would have the Fed raising rates, but that's not going to happen.
Let's narrow that. You say in the vicinity of 3.0%?
Yeah, by the end of the year, yeah. Which would be the lowest since the mid-1950s.
Well, yeah, I'm going to say go back to Eisenhower, John. I literally can't frame that in my mind.
The Fed has consistently underestimated how low unemployment could go without inflation or wages accelerating considerably. And Ian, as you point out, the reaction function has shifted. We could see a test of a two-handle and a Fed that doesn't even budge.
Well, certainly not this year, that's for sure. I mean, I think what they'd like to do is just carry on with the way they're set up now, which is to say we need a material change in the outlook to do anything. and then go away, from June and come back in December. But my point is that they might come back in December after the election, which they really don't want to be involved in, come back after the election and say, well, actually 3% unemployment, that's nobody's idea of sustainable, especially if it still looks like it might go even further down, which, 3 months ago looked very unlikely because the business surveys, all the employment numbers had weakened substantially in the surveys, and the hard data haven't followed. And so it looks to me like businesses kind of, they overestimated how bad the hit was going to be, and actually payroll growth to me maybe can hang around 150, 160, in which case unemployment will go down.
Ian, your optimistic view of the U.S. economy is at direct odds of what we're seeing today in the bond market, with the yield curve flattening to the narrowest of the year, and you're seeing yields steadily lower. What is the market getting wrong that you're getting right?
I don't think the market's getting anything wrong today. This is a fear sell-off in equities, and that money's got to go somewhere. So, it just always goes into treasuries in this environment. We simply don't know how bad this coronavirus thing is going to be. My gut feeling, my guess, I'm not an epidemiologist, but my guess from what I've been reading is that actually this isn't going to be as bad as SARS was back 15 years ago or so, and that we're going to see a substantial rebound in stocks within the next couple of weeks, and that, of course, I think will then drive treasury yields back up again. If I thought yields were going to stay down here and it was going to be a much worse thing, that would be a different story, but I'm pretty optimistic.
Ian, what does the investment dynamic look like? John, I think back to Davos, and it really wasn't discussed all that much. Ian Shepherdson, okay, there's a pickup. Does investment pick up?
Yeah, well, some of it does. The residential component, I think, is going to grow double digit, for a while. It's the business component that's likely to continue to be the drag. But I think that the real point here is that it's not anything like as big a drag as it looked like it was going to be a few months ago. So again, like the payroll numbers have been better than the surveys have suggested. So the capex orders numbers, they're not great. Let's be clear, they're not great. But the surveys back in the fall were telling us we should expect a meltdown, and that just really hasn't happened. So from a market perspective, you've had these bad things that haven't happened. You've had the Fed easing rates. You've got the Fed buying $60 billion of Treasury bills every month through until second quarter at the earliest. That's a lot of liquidity and a lot of relatively good news on the macro front. So, as I said, once there's some clarity on the coronavirus story, I think the market rebounds substantially. I don't really see it peaking until the middle of the year, at which point I think the Fed will probably stop their bill purchases.
Ian Shepherdson, thank you so much for being with us. Ian Shepherdson, Pantheon Macroeconomics founder and chief economist. Really interesting to hear how people are saying that, we just don't know. But if this is not that significant, the market will rebound a lot. I don't know if that's true.
Well, we'll find out. My answer is it's been a 3% reset.
But I do have to wonder, but I wonder, how much is this just an excuse for people to take the position that they actually already have?
I strongly agree with that, and the idea of capturing profits seems to be a good excuse right now. With our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. The New York Times received a manuscript of John Bolton's book, which says President Trump told him he wanted to withhold security aid from Ukraine until they investigated the Bidens. White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham told Fox News she believes the timing of this is suspect.
Our team just went on Saturday and in 2 hours undid all of the hours and 24 hours that the Dems did in the Senate trial. And it's very clear the president did nothing wrong. And then suddenly this manuscript has magically appeared in the hands of the New York Times, making very, very big claims.
Trump's defense team will continue their testimony in his impeachment trial today. This morning, NTSB investigators are at the site of a helicopter crash that killed NBA legend Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, and 7 others in Calabasas, California. Yesterday's crash left debris over the length of a football field. More than 200 survivors of the Auschwitz concentration camp gathered there today on the 75th anniversary of its liberation by the Soviet Army in 1945. The stories are hard to listen to. One survivor, Benjamin Lesser, recounted the horrors.
After they killed you in the gas chambers, they cut your hair, they pulled out your gold teeth, and they put you on gurneys. But infants, they couldn't be bothered. The infants had no gold teeth, they had no hair, so they threw them on the trucks, on dump trucks, on top of the half-dead bodies.
At least 1.1 million people were killed in Auschwitz. The Chinese government is confirming more than 2,800 cases of the new coronavirus with 81 deaths. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John?
Michael Barr, great to see you. When should we get excited for the Super Bowl? 3 days, 4 days, 5 days?
The moment you buy the Doritos, you're all set.
The Doritos?
Doritos.
When I go into the food store and get the Doritos, that means I'm excited about it.
This segment has been sponsored by Pepsi. Well done, Michael Barr.
I thought you had a whole week of concerts building up to the event. Isn't that what happens?
Oh yeah. In fact, we got to go through Media Day. We got to go through all that stuff.
When's Media Day?
I'm trying to think if it's today or tomorrow. I'm not sure, but you know how that's the question where someone asks from the gallery is like, "Will you marry me, Tom Brady?" And Tom is like, "Well, it's been real."
So my 10-year-old son said to me, "I can't wait to watch the Super Bowl commercials." And
he's excited about the commercials.
He's excited about the commercials because he gets excited to figure out, how big some of these companies can go.
Okay, I hear that Jason Kelly and Carol Massa of Bloomberg Radio will be down.
They will be
in Miami for the big event. Have they got tickets? No, they don't have tickets. They leave before the game. What? Are you serious? Okay, well, it's great that they'll be there for the build-up. Sad that they won't be there for the game.
We need to get tickets.
Can we be there for the game?
Yeah.
Bloomberg Surveillance should turn up for the game.
Yeah.
Now, that would be cool, wouldn't it?
All of a sudden, Bloomberg newsman runs on the field.
Oh, dear Lord.
We'll expense the tickets to Tom Keene's account, who's no longer in the studio with us, who stepped out.
So
he won't
say
know.
whatever we want.
Exactly.
Right now,
Michael, great to see you.
Thank you.
I'm going to get to the price section just quickly, just to take you guys out and get you up to speed on what's happening worldwide cross-asset. Equity futures down by 1.5%. We're off by 49 points. Risk aversion as China's ability to contain the virus outbreak continues to be tested. That means equities down and down hard, not just in China like last week, but spreading more broadly to Europe and to the United States as well. In the bond market, 10-year Treasury yields, just wow, 1.618%. We're down 6, call it 7 basis points on a 10-year. On twos, we're down 5 basis points to around about 1.45%. In foreign exchange, as you'd expect, the bid into the haven currencies, the likes of the Swissy, the likes of the Japanese yen as well. And just remarkable to see crude break down. Brent crude and WTI down by around about 3%. WTI, $52.60. This is Bloomberg.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. As the sometimes tragic and deadly coronavirus spreads, investors are also keeping an eye on the Asian real estate market.
We think the impact will most likely will be on the investor sentiment and will also affect the tourism sector and also the retail sales. But that expected to last maybe 2 quarters at most, and the impact will be short-lived.
Philip Zhang is Senior Equity Analyst at Morningstar Investment Management Asia.
It will affect the Hong Kong property market overall, but I think have a greater impact on the retail and the office sector versus the residential property market. But once this matter is under control, we do believe the liquidity will return and the risk premium will recede, and that will be supportive of the property market in Hong Kong.
And Zhang says, don't expect China's government to jump in to help its property market if prices do dip. And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Connecting decision makers to a...
Take the helm and ignite your spirit of adventure with a Sunsail holiday.
Relax on a skippered yacht from sunny St. Lucia to the nutmeg-scented shores of Grenada. Or take charge with a bareboat charter along Dubrovnik's glittering coastline. With up to 20% off selected destinations, now is the time to book your Sunsail adventure. Sunsail. See the world differently.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Intensifying concern about the economic and human impact of the deadly coronavirus, sending stocks, oil, and China's yuan tumbling while spurring haven assets. Treasuries are gaining, Italian bonds jumping after regional elections. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 51 points. Dow futures down 445. NASDAQ futures down 167. The DAX in Germany is down 2.5%. 10-year Treasury up 20-30 seconds. Yield 1.61%. And the yield on the 2-year, 1.44%. NYMEX crude oil is down 3% or $1.62 at $52.57 a barrel. And COMEX gold up 0.7% or $10.20 at $15.8840 an ounce. The euro, 1.1030 against the dollar. British pound, 1.3066. And the yen is at 109.03. Sprint subscriber gains exceeded analyst predictions in a surprising show of strength for the smallest major carrier in the U.S. Sprint added 494,000 regular monthly subscribers in the fiscal third quarter as churn, the rate of monthly cancellations, rose to 1.98% from 1.84% a year ago. Shares of Boeing are lower after reports that one of its planes crashed in Afghanistan. A 737-400 passenger plane reportedly crashed while carrying around 83 people. And U.S. homebuilder D.R. Horton reported quarterly orders that beat expectations as low mortgage rates fueled demand. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate it. I'm looking at copper. I haven't looked at copper in a while, and it's an ugly pennant. I mean, it's not got a lot of technical veracity, but certainly down over 2 standard deviations. It's an abrupt move, and supports out there going back 2 years, and then you got to go back 4 years. It's sort of a mess, I'd put it. The major trend this morning, Lisa, is everybody in the Keene household wants to dye their hair green.
Oh, yeah.
Even Vet Bill wants to dye his hair green.
Vet Bill is expensive.
Billie Eilish is, it's a profound influence. She cleaned up at the Grammys last night.
I hear Vet Bill's very sensitive to the popular trends, and he has his own Twitter account, so you can follow that. I will say, I find today's price action fascinating, and I thought what we saw Friday and the continuation today is really interesting because there were a key group of consensus trades heading into 2020 that yields would remain range bound at best. You would have crude that would stabilize, the dollar would weaken, emerging markets would rally, and stocks would continue to grind up as we see this reflation, yield curve steepening. You're seeing the reversal of every single one of those, every single one. And I have to wonder how much this is due to positioning, since that was the consensus heading into 2020, and how much we're seeing is something else that is unexpected that's being recognized in markets. How much is this due to the coronavirus, and how much is this due to the fact that people do not think necessarily the U.S. consumer can keep powering the U.S. economy, and that China can stave off the slower growth?
Yeah, right now with us, with Bloomberg Opinion, Adam Minter's with us, who has decidedly Pacific Rim view and has done a lot of work for us in that area. Adam, an open question into your Monday evening in Asia. What will happen tomorrow? What are you focused on in terms of Chinese authorities or world health authorities? Which way does that cut?
Well, I think the region is primarily focused on the World Health Authorities, and I think everybody is really waiting for the WHO to sound the full emergency. It seems like it's just a matter of time at this point, especially with some of the health news that we've gotten in the last 24 hours that the that the epidemic, the virus is spreading before it becomes symptomatic, that there's people who are symptomatic but don't show temperature. So, there's real fear now that this is spreading, under the radar, and it's starting to have economic consequences. But until the WHO is ready to pull the trigger, we just don't know.
You have on your Twitter feed, Adam Minter, and this goes to his academics, folks, and beautiful observation, 4 posters in Shanghai slapped on a concrete wall with tape. Is that basically the solution for China, is traditional messaging to billions of people?
It's one of them. Those posters were, I took that photo in 2003 in the midst of the SARS crisis in Shanghai, and it was basic, hygiene messages, don't spit, don't sneeze on people. And, you may say, well, that's very basic. Everybody knows that. But not everybody does know that. You still have these large migrant populations coming in from rural areas. And so the public health messaging matters a lot and made a huge difference during SARS. And I believe, and I think a lot of the WHO experts and other people involved in past epidemics believe that it can make a big difference in this one. So yes, I think that's going to be a very key part of getting control of this thing, and it may even play a much bigger role than the quarantine itself.
There's a question, Adam, about the internal messaging, also external messaging, and what this does to China's reputation internationally to be able to attract visitors and commerce. How big of a deal is this on that front?
It's a very big deal. Again, referring back to SARS, in 2003, China saw foreign tourist numbers drop 60%, as a direct result of SARS. And you may say, well, foreign tourist numbers don't matter that much in a situation like this. Well, foreign tourism accounts for around 1% of GDP in China right now. So it's a business issue, but for China as well, it's also sort of a public diplomacy and soft power issue. They've long coveted, the kind of reputation in tourism that a place like France gets. It enhances international prestige. And when you have a situation like this, it really mars kind of brand China, both as a tourism destination, but also as someone maybe you want to be doing business with at all. If the local government in Wuhan can't get control of something like this, it makes you doubt your investment decisions going into Wuhan, for example.
Adam, it's also raising a question about how much the Chinese economy has transformed since 2003 when the SARS issue was raging. How much more is China dependent on tourism, on services, on these sort of key areas that are being hit by this virus?
Well, that's just exactly it. In 2003, China was largely an export economy, and you didn't have. Services was far less than half of the economy. Today, services are more than half, and so the impact is going to be very, very significant.
Adam, one final question, and this goes back to your authoritative work on trash and the environment in China. I was with John Kerry, the former Secretary of State, in Davos, and he was heated that the focus should be on China. Do you see where you are a more environmental China?
I do, and I think you are going to see even more of that over the next 2 to 3 years, especially starting this fall when they're holding a global conference on biodiversity. They're starting to see from a national planning perspective the need for there to be environmental services, meaning everything from mangrove forests to filter water on the coast. To the need to start cleaning up their soil and water conditions, which are abysmal. And all of that feeds into this situation with this current crisis, where you have, major health problems brewing, right underneath the surface, quite literally, that they need to address. And that's an environmental and a health issue. So, yes, definitely.
Adam Minter, thank you so much. Can't say enough, folks, about his work with Bloomberg Opinion. And, of course, Mr. Minter with hugely authoritative books on China and on is most famous on Junkyard Planet. As well, dead serious stuff about that. This is a huge theme in Davos, Lisa. Just China's got to get their act together. There's no other way to put it. Yeah, China has to figure out how to combat some of the issues that are facing the rest of the world. Also, questions about the recycling with the U.S. It's an interesting issue. It was their futures at negative 49. More data checks the next hour. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it. Add a boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run.
Mix it. Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Peoples of London, cooking for family and friends is a real hassle, Sergey tells me. So I, Alexander, occasionally take care of marvelous dinner for whole family. Which means we all go out for meerkat meals. Exactly. How did you guess? Get 2 for 1 on food for up to 6 people at your local favorites, like the Schoolhouse, with meerkat meals, when you buy through Compare the Market. Qualifying purchase, app only, 2 for 1 on selected food, participating restaurants, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday, T's and C's and exclusions apply.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Let's talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The Federal Reserve's independence is crucial.
Central banks should be prepared and not presumptuous.
Finance.
In order to grow, you need to innovate.
Global money doesn't like uncertainty.
Investment.
I think the issue in the market is really more about the possibility of a recession in the next couple of years.
I do think we need to get back to where we have always been, the American dream.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. Thank you for joining us on economics, finance, investment, international relations. Of course, we're all virologists today. Front and center, Paul. The flu, the virus was there. and then it got a little worse, and frankly, it hasn't gotten a lot worse. It's just got a little more worse, and that's enough to really move the markets.
It really is, Tom. I think it's just raising the concerns about just the recognition that we really don't know how big this could get. So it just seems to, as you mentioned, to keep getting a little bit worse on the margin, and that's enough to spook markets here.
Really a set of smart interviews today. We thank our team for really blowing up the show. We will speak of Mr. Bryant here late in the hour. Thrilled that Scott Soshnick could join us later. But Paul, what is remarkable over a weekend and to see futures at negative 51, Dow futures negative 441 is, it's a correction, no, but there's just a correlated shift in the market this morning.
There really is, Tom. I think, again, we've had, people have been looking for maybe a little bit of a pullback. What would be a catalyst for a little bit of a pullback? We had that big run up in the fourth quarter continuing in here to January. So perhaps this is simply the catalyst that the market's been looking for.
David Wilson has a plan here, no doubt, to approach us. I saw United Airlines down a fair amount. I mean, there's a Pacific tinge to this, isn't there, David Wilson?
Well, there is, but you could argue it's more broadly travel related. We saw some of that last week as well. What's different today is we're seeing financial and technology stocks really take a hit. You look at finance, you see Bank of America down 3%. You see Citigroup down 2.5%. JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo lower by 2%. Of course, you look at what's going on in the bond market, yields falling, not good for these banks in terms of their ability perhaps to generate interest income down the line. In terms of technology companies, a couple there are notable. Apple's down 2%. The iPhone maker's fiscal first quarter results are due after tomorrow's close. Analysts expect Apple to deliver renewed earnings growth based on the Bloomberg survey. And chipmaker Advanced Micro Devices also has results coming out tomorrow, and AMD is down 3.5%. You talked about what happened last week. I mean, Intel's down 2%. Now, this is a stock that rose almost 15% last week and reached its highest price in September 2000. So definitely pulling back a bit. The chipmaker was lowered to the equivalent of hold from buy at Northland Securities. But then you look at these travel-related stocks. The biggest declines, probably not surprising, in the companies that own casinos in the Chinese city of Macau. Las Vegas Sands down 8%, MGM Resorts down 5%, Wynn Resorts down 6.5%. Talking about the airlines, American off 4.5%, Delta down 3.5%, United down 3%, cruise line owners lower as well, Carnival and Royal Caribbean both off about 4.5%. The online travel companies are lower. Booking Holdings down 2.5%, Expedia down 4.5%, TripAdvisor down 3%, and we can't forget Yum China, the owner of KFC and Pizza Hut restaurants. That stock down 7.5%.
7.5%, very important.
There are some winners, though. AbbVie is one of them. It's up 1.5%. China's testing the drug maker's HIV treatment, Alluvia.
So they have a solution to this if they identify it's the appropriate one.
Specifically, it's for pneumonia caused by the coronavirus. That's what the test is focusing on. So AbbVie's up 1.5%. Allergan is higher by 1%. Now, the drug maker agreed to sell a gastrointestinal medicine to Nestle and a proposed treatment for Crohn's disease to AstraZeneca. Terms weren't disclosed. But here's the thing, AbbVie's involved because they have a $63 billion deal to buy Allergan, and these sales are designed to push things forward.
One more.
How about Sprint? Nothing to do with the coronavirus. Shares are up about 1% in early trading. The mobile phone company added more contract customers in the fiscal third quarter than analysts expected.
David Wilson, thank you so much. Paul, in the Zeitgeist this morning, and I'm sorry I can't cite the article where I read it, but I'm going to put it out there anyways. I was thunderstruck by, as we look at cybersecurity and the trust of China in digital, thunderstruck of a United Kingdom caught between a rock and a hard place on Huawei. And Prime Minister Johnson has some tough decisions to make, given U.S. pressure on Huawei and cyber and computers and all that. That it's not like some trade 3-year plan out there. The whole cyber issue's here and now.
It's
different
Huawei.
countries.
Yeah, it's Huawei. Absolutely. Cybersecurity is really becoming a key issue between the U.S. and China. Recently, Senator Rick Scott sent a letter to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission talking about concerns about how communist China is requiring American businesses to turn over their encryption keys to Chinese officials as a prerequisite for continuing to do business there. Let's get a sense of what the Securities and Exchange Commission thinks about that in terms of what needs to be disclosed to U.S. investors. We welcome our good friend Arthur Levitt, former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission and also a board member of Bloomberg LP. Arthur, thanks so much for joining us. This seems like a big deal for U.S. companies.
I think it is, and I think Rick Scott really displayed great concern about what's going on in China. And the main point of his letter was that information about changes to the law in China must be disclosed immediately, and that he felt that investors must know everything a business does in communist China, because all of those things are going to be shared directly with the Chinese government that is jailing its people for religious beliefs and building up their military to compete against us. So what Scott is saying, in effect, is that the SEC must increase their efforts to protect investors against the risks associated with issuing companies complying with Communist China's new cryptography laws. And what the SEC plans to do ensures that companies who are currently doing business in Communist China will disclose to investors the impact, risks, and status of their compliance with all of these new laws.
Well, this is extraordinary. And let's just take somebody visible like Apple. It could be an industrial chemical company as well. Do you perceive, Arthur, almost given all that we've seen in the last 6 months or a year, that the way we've always done business in China is done?
Yes. Yes, I do. And I think that the first priority must be to protect American business from the growing threats of Communist China. I agree with Scott on that. We've got to be as transparent as possible about the threat, and that means disclosing to investors the alarming reality of the risks they face by investing in companies doing business with Communist China. That's the response.
Yeah, it's interesting, Arthur. If we think back to Google years ago, making the business decision to essentially not do business in China because they didn't want to, censor the search results and so on and so forth. Do you think we might see U.S. companies take maybe a little bit more of a cautious stance, even if the market opportunity in China is so great?
Yes, I think there will be greater caution by some companies. I don't think that many of them right now are going to go as far as Google, but there certainly will be more caution. There'll be more conversation in boardrooms, and I think in general they are being alerted to the dangers of investing in Communist China.
Arthur Levitt, thank you so much. He's the former chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission, of course, Bloomberg LP board member as well. Futures to negative 55-ish. They bounced up negative 45-ish, and we've rolled over quietly. I don't want to overplay that, but nevertheless, a churn above daily lows, negative 53 on SPX futures, Dow futures, negative 452. Paul, we've been apart for a week, and within it, I saw the change media of Davos, and I see, I guess, worldwide how fast all this digital's moving. You are expert in this. Am I wrong that the acceleration of the digital product across all of media and platforms, it's just go, 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 isn't it?
I think it really is, Tom. There's no turning back, certainly, and that's simply a function of how consumers are consuming media today. We're no longer sitting in front of our TV sets for appointment viewing. So it's simply get the content you want, where you want it, on what device you want. And so the companies have really had to pivot hard. And the greatest example is, the Walt Disney Company essentially staking its future. Bob Iger staking his legacy on the future of streaming, which is very different from the model, which was really dependent upon the cable bundle.
Lots to talk about here this week as we move move forward. It was amazing to see some of the shifts going there year after year to the meetings of the World Economic Forum. Right now we shift to the news in New York City. Here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. Reaction continues to come in regarding the death of NBA legend Kobe Bryant. He died along with 8 others in a helicopter crash in Calabasas, California Sunday. Former friend and rival player Scottie Pippen, who spent years playing with Michael Jordan, told ABC's Good Morning America Kobe Bryant modeled himself after the legendary player.
Kobe wanted to be known as the greatest player to ever play the game. I mean, he wanted to be better than Michael Jordan. He wanted people to realize that he was right there and that he put in the work to let you know that, he is one of the greats.
The circumstances surrounding the crash are unknown and an investigation is ongoing. The New York Times reports that former National Security Advisor John Bolton's forthcoming book alleges that President Trump tied Ukraine aid to Biden investigations. Lead House impeachment manager Adam Schiff says the revelation bolsters Democrats' arguments that witnesses like Bolton are necessary in the Senate impeachment trial of President Trump.
This is the test for these senators. They've taken an oath to be impartial. They've just learned there's a key witness going to the heart of the allegations. The question they have to answer is, do they want to hear the truth? Do they want to cross-examine John Bolton? John Bolton, according to the president, is not telling the truth. Well, let's put John Bolton to the test. He's willing to do it. Question is, are the senators willing to hear the truth?
Day 2 for Trump's defense in the impeachment trial takes place today. Rescuers in Turkey recovered the bodies of the last 2 missing quake victims, raising the death toll from the powerful tremor that hit eastern Turkey to 41. The magnitude 6.8 earthquake that struck Friday night also injured about 1,600 people. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Paul, Tom?
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney and Tom King. Paul, I just want to squeeze this in here very quickly. In Davos, in every hotel, in every part of the conference center, there are piles and stacks of newspapers. There's a little bit of the European newspapers left. Almost no exposure of American newspapers.
No. Then if you go into a waiting room in London, any office in London, there will be 4 or 5 newspapers in the waiting room. So the newspapers, obviously in secular decline globally, but they're holding their own a little bit better in parts outside of the U.S., where there's a little bit more of that print culture, particularly in certain European capitals, I noticed.
Have we gotten where digital has a margin anywhere near what print margin used to be? The answer is no, right?
No, but well, it depends. I mean, if you look at just like a Google or something like that, yes. But I think the New York Times, the FT, the Wall Street Journal, their online versions are very profitable. And in fact, that has really saved the New York Times company. They are adding a couple 100,000 digital subscribers every quarter. It's just amazing here. So it's really saved the certain kind of large franchise national labels like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. This is Bloomberg.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform,